a Playlist original.
Ryan Atwood was a good kid caught in a bad situation.
You gotta have a plan. Some kind of a dream.
And things were about to go from bad to worse.
I want you out of my house. Mom, where am I going to go?
Only now, he's getting another chance at life.
You brought him home?
In a whole new world.
He's not a criminal mastermind. He's a kid who has nowhere to go.
But in the OC, nothing is as it seems.
Welcome to the dark side.
Fox presents a new series about one kid who had nothing to live for.
Oh, this is how it's done in Orange County.
And one family who needed something to hold on to.
I don't want this kid in my house anymore.
Where's he supposed to go?
He has a family. It's not up to you to decide whether or not they're good enough.
Welcome to the OC.
What do you think of Newport?
I think I could get in less trouble where I'm from.
You have no idea.
A new series coming soon to Fox.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your host, Gis and Jackson. We are combining some things today.
That's right.
It's kind of a light news week still, and we're also doing a special anniversary episode. So giving you guys the best of both worlds this week.
Yes, despite for the most part, the last few months have been light on news, but we've been able to find a way to keep the episodes, jam-packed with stuff. The Hollywood machine is still pumping out stuff for us to talk about, but I feel like this week in particular has been a little bit light, but there are some controversies that we want to dive into today on top of talking about the OC's 20th anniversary. So I'm excited to get those things underway. Yeah, it's got a little bit of a different episode for us today.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually felt the slow news week. Because I got a message, they were like, "Hey, man, you're not really posting on G Reels." I was like, "This is not by choice. There's just not there wasn't a lot going on." And then on the websites, it was just like we were pulling. I focused more on the features for MovieWeb this week because at least there's always room for an opinion, so like that stuff can still flow,
right?
But there was no like real huge news,
nothing groundbreaking.
No real trailers. I mean, I was happy today. Started off with some trailers, like nothing worthy of us talking about on here, but
right,
there was a couple of movies that released trailers this morning, and then they also announced National Cinema Day again, the second time they're doing this in a year. So $4 movies on Sunday at most participating locations. So I mean, that was a story enough to write about. So I was like, at least there was something at the start of this week. But yeah, man, last week was mostly quiet. And then one of the stories that we're going to cover today, like kind of broke before last week, but I was like, I don't know if that's worthy of us doing it, even though it's like related to a movie.
Right.
I wasn't sure if we should cover it until people got really insane on Twitter and said that someone in this movie should give back her prestigious award because of what's happening with the movie. Honestly, all three of the topics that we have for you today, it's some kind of controversial, like, this person is what you thought was true might not be true. This other group is maybe cheating someone out of money that they are owed, and then the other one is just a matter of, I think, people just trying to pull some kind of controversy where there's not any there,
right?
The Bradley Cooper stuff, and
right.
I mean, but it's all, I think they're all entertaining enough to cover.
Oh, absolutely. The common denominator with all these stories is some sort of different level of controversy. I feel like by the end of it, we'll be able to rank them by tier. But it's going to be interesting, though.
Yeah, and then of course we are going to talk about the 20th anniversary finally of the OC. I actually have a few friends that have been waiting for me to do this one. Nice. I have friends that listen to our podcast weekly, and they're like, "Hey, man, why haven't you done it yet?" And I was like, "Hey, we're working on it. It's just this is a lot of work. I mean, it's not fun. It's fun, but it's
certainly. But yeah,
trying to fit everything in is, in a perfect world, we would have gotten in closer to the August 5th date. But like we've said it before, I think we've learned that it doesn't really matter. Sometimes, like our Fruitvale station episode did really well, and we did that a couple, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that official anniversary date. So I don't think it really matters. I think it's just a matter of like, hey, we chose to acknowledge it on the year in which
exactly
it's celebrating a milestone.
Month is even closer. So, but it's a lot of work to get certain watches in at certain times, especially with new releases and your own movie watching schedule and life. But I feel like overall we do a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think so too. But don't worry, guys. I'm going to try to bring up as much of the Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, adjacent OC stuff I can to make you guys all really happy.
I'm excited a lot for your perspective on that show.
Kind of fill in the blanks for Jackson and get everyone excited that we're fans of this show and watched it in real time like I did. And also a lot of us who grew up in this area, even though we didn't grow up in Orange County, the fact that they like shot a lot of it here also makes it still a really important iconic show for us, because
definitely
when anything films in the area, especially, I mean, there is like a novelty to movies filming here because it is cool. Like you get like a lot of the main Halloween 1978 streets are in like Pasadena, and some of them are in like parts of Hollywood, so they're very close over here too.
That's super cool.
The Nightmare on Elm Street house is actually in Hollywood too, like very, very close. So it's cool to go to those locations. But when it's a show that was on for multiple seasons, where you can be like, oh, I know that spot, I know that spot. They're saying that's that certain spot, but it's not. So it's kind of cool to have that kind of little, almost like time capsule a little bit.
Oh, certainly. I mean, we don't get anything like that over here. I mean, the biggest movie that I can think of that filmed anywhere near me was Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, filmed just out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is like 4 hours from where I'm sitting right now. And even then, that was like a set, like a studio built lighthouse on a tiny little island, not even in a recognizable location. So to have a show like this that was quite as popular as it was back in the day, to have been filming in a spot where you're like routinely going, like that is super cool. Yeah. I would, melt if I had the opportunity to even just, see and recognize the production around here. Would be really cool.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that makes it not quite dated is like you see these locations and it makes it still feel fresh. Like there is certainly some stuff that makes the show dated. And I'll talk about it a little bit, but I think the vibrancy of it and where it's shot, you're like, oh, like that. I mean, I saw that yesterday. So you're just like, it's that's what makes it kind of unique. And if you're from the area and live in the area.
Right.
And I'll be interested to hear what being from Canada, and you watched 2 episodes of it, and we brought it up on our last episode. I was like, I wonder what he's gonna think that if it's so SoCal LA that he's like, I just don't get it, or but we'll see how you feel.
Yeah, no, I mean, overall it was positive, but I'll save thoughts for when we jump into that. But for first, I was wondering what did you want to cover first? Is there a particular controversy that you're just gnawing at that you want to get out there?
Well, you know what? I like Sandra Bullock, so we'll start with that.
Okay, for sure. Yeah.
So you've seen The Blind Side.
That's right. A few times. Yep.
So back in 2009, this movie comes out, based on the book of the same name, about this guy, Michael Orr, who did come from the best upbringing, and then this family, according to the book and movie, they take him in, and what he kind of lacked academically, he made up for in this kind of like natural athleticism for the game of football, because he also had size to his advantage as well. He's like a big dude. And the big success story overall with that is after they take him in, of course, he ends up going to the NFL. He plays for the Baltimore Ravens, Carolina Panthers, and I think one other team after that. The movie is a huge out of nowhere hit. It comes out around the time of Thanksgiving, so it was like the perfect time for family feel good
and football season.
Warm your heart kind of movies.
Exactly.
Makes it comes out the same year that Sandra Bullock does The Proposal, so it's a huge year for Sandra Bullock. And then eventually, thanks to the Dark Knight role from the year before, The Blind Side gets nominated for Best Picture, because I think in the end, because it became part of that first crop of like 10 Best Picture nominees.
Right.
I think because The Blind Side was so popular, I like the movie. I just don't think it's like, as a movie, like I think she deserved her nomination and her win. I just don't know if the movie itself was like a big Oscar movie from what it's been a few years since I watched it, but
it's funny you say that, because I remember like I saw this movie. I couldn't remember if it was the year it came out necessarily, but when I was young, I was 11 when this movie came out, and I remember seeing it around that time. Maybe I was 12, maybe I was 13, but my mom was a fan of this movie. I feel like I saw it with her, and then I'd seen it maybe another time after that, like still while I was pretty young. And then I remember it was only probably 4 or 5 years ago. I had the DVD and I threw it in one day, and I kind of had this feeling like it wasn't as great as I remembered it. The story and the performances are good, but I remember like what you just said is like, as a movie though, this didn't really like strike anything for me, didn't really do it for me. But So it's funny now to see it. This isn't a movie I thought we'd, would generate much like discussion other than, for people that genuinely like it. But yeah. But here we go.
Back in the it's 2023 now, right? So it's 2023. The movie comes out in 2009. Like I said, makes a lot of money. Sandra Bullock in the Best Actress category swept that award season. Like she won.
Oh, is that right?
Of course, she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. She won the SAG. She won the Golden Globe. Like she was the front runner down there. And like basically, a lot of people like to compare her and Julia Roberts. They say that this is like her Erin Brockovich, the way that like Erin Brockovich was for Julia Roberts, where she won her first Oscar finally for playing a real person. Of course, Sandra Bullock playing the real life Leanne Tui in The Blind Side. A real success story for everyone involved until now, I guess, because Michael Oher is saying that he basically, and this is not the part of the story that we'll spend too much time on because this is more like the TMZ, like he said, she said part of the story.
Right.
Basically, Michael Oher says that he was under the impression that this family legally adopted him, but really he was under a conservatorship, and he believes that he is owed like millions and millions of dollars from them using his likeness. But I think he also believes that there is this windfall of money that should have come from The Blind Side, because this is a movie I believe that made over $309 million worldwide. And apparently, what I didn't know, because I thought he still maintained a good relationship with his family. I'm just basing it on I only know the movie, and I didn't read the book, of course. I only know the movie,
right.
And I thought like, how can something so good go so wrong? I mean, it's so like it's such a cool story.
When are things ever as they seem, right?
I know, right? I guess he hasn't really had a real good relationship with them in the last decade, and now he's accusing them of cheating him out of all this money, and he's got lawyers now. And of course, when this story breaks, and I'm just waiting for the internet and social media to be the internet and social media.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of, I don't think they should go after anyone until they get the full story, right?
Of course.
But I thought, of course, they would go after the Tui family because, like, how dare you? Why would you? The movie already gets shit for having what a lot of people call like the white savior complex, where they're like, oh, like,
I can
look
see
at
that when you mention that for sure.
Like, even when the movie was like successful, that was like a bone of contention when it came out. But it could easily be kind of swept under the rug because at the end of the day, it was viewed as a success story because of his real life and what he ended up accomplishing after they took him in, and getting a career in the NFL. And it should be. It sounds like a movie in itself. It doesn't even sound like a real story until you dig into it. But no, the internet decided to go after Sandra Bullock too. I want to preface by saying there are a lot of people that are also saying that this is a very ridiculous notion to go after her. But there are a lot of people that were saying that she should have to give back her Oscar for The Blind Side because, well, basically, she spent time with the family. She got to know them.
Okay.
And perhaps, because suddenly Sandra Bullock is an investigative reporter. Like, she should have known what was going,
exactly.
what was going on.
There's a lot of high standards for, the length actresses go to for their role.
Right. So then a lot of people on Twitter that said that, she should have to give it back. Thankfully, there are a lot of people on Twitter supporting her, being like, she is an actor that got a job and she did her job. She did it well. She got awarded for it, and that's it. And I'm glad I've actually seen some really funny ones like, oh, don't come after our girl Sandra. Like, a lot of people like defending her. And I thought that was kind of cool to see because I think probably one of the least problematic people in Hollywood is Sandra Bullock. I've never hear anything bad about her.
What is there bad to say, really? Yeah, she's
lovely to work with, and
absolutely.
Like she's a talented actress. And then she's also going through like personal stuff too. She just lost her partner of like the last few years to ALS. Like, that was like a really secret kind of battle that he was going through. And I'm sure she's like mature enough to be like, this is not even worthy of my attention. Like, what these people that think this. But I just thought it was funny that, like, of course, the internet was going to internet and do that. Now, even if we are to entertain what she should have known,
right?
Because if we are going to say that, we can also say that the Tui family only let her in as much as they wanted to. And it's not like she had to dig deep to really, she doesn't have to find out their deepest, darkest secrets. She needed to get to know the lady she was playing.
Yes.
and the
dynamic of
family, but like the
Yeah.
dynamics. And I also like to point out that Sandra Bullock turned down this role 3 or 4 times before she took it. She didn't like, it wasn't like she ran after it. She wasn't a producer on this movie. I actually said if she was a producer, maybe had a
Maybe more of an
responsibility-
argument at
that's why-
least. Yeah.
a responsibility to dig deeper into what was going on.
Right.
But Sandra Bullock, and they were like, well, she made a lot of money off of it. Sandra Bullock actually took a pay cut for this and was smart, like most actors in their position who believe in the movie. She took a pay cut and opted to take a percentage of the box office. So
Nice.
that's just her being a good
well
businesswoman.
done, Sandra. Yep.
And so there's that. And then there's a big bone of contention of like, well, the movie made so much money. And I'm glad that the author of the book, I don't have his name in front of me right now, but
Michael Lewis.
Okay, he said that this is like the whole Michael Orr not getting the money he deserved from that project, because like the family claims that they each got $14,000 as a participation fee, and that was it. So that was the mom, dad, 2 kids, Michael Orr as well. And the writer of the book basically said, like, you know, the whole Blindside controversy and there not being enough, what he feels isn't he didn't get what he was deserved, is more of a studio system problem than anything. Like they got a majority of the money because that is what they worked out.
Yeah,
and that is a really broken, greedy system. But it has nothing really to do with this family, who, by the way, already rich. They were rich because they sold off a lot of their restaurant businesses and stuff. They are not hard up for money,
right?
And then of course, you know, the other side of this is that they claim that like Michael Orr tried to like shake him down before he made this story public and wanted $15 million from them, and they refused to do that. And now that's why all this is coming out now.
I see.
And then also a lot of people are pointing to a book that he wrote where he basically did acknowledge that he was in a conservatorship and not legally adopted because he was over the age of 18, and that's how it was going to work. And they didn't do this in a way, apparently, to, according to them and a lot of people that are in the know, to control him. It was more about like, hey, like we want to make sure that we can do what we need to do for him financially and take care of him and all this stuff. And since he's over this age, this is the best way to do it. And that's all I'm going to give credence to that, because I don't really know all the ins and outs of the, you know, the legal part of the adoption and conservative. Yeah, the first time I heard conservatorship was with Britney Spears.
Yeah,
so I was
me,
like,
me as well. Yeah.
and there's different, you know, types of them, of course.
Okay.
You know, they're like, you know, something like Britney Spears, they felt that she did not have the mental capacity to take care of herself, and we're keeping it in,
right?
Yeah, and her finances, and we're keeping it in the world of movies. Amanda Bynes was on One, not anymore. Even though she recently kind of went off the rails again too. But yeah, even if you were to, there's no reason that Sandra Bullock would need to know anything beyond what was presented to her,
right,
to play the role, and that's it. And I don't even know how much responsibility an actor really needs to have in a situation like this, I guess, to really. I mean, I guess it might be a certain situations where they would, depending on what the person did, and you find out later what happened. But
right.
But how deep is she supposed to dig? I guess is the.
And well, how is she know? How is she to know how deep to dig? Because I can only imagine when this script comes out, or however she is pitched this role, it's obviously sold as the story that we got. This is a family that took in, you know, this down on his luck young man who happened to have this great athletic talent, and they kind of pulled him up from the gutter, and he was able to make something of his life. I'm sure this controversy that is in the spotlight now wasn't in the conversation at the point she was doing, getting to know the family and preparing for the role. So I can only imagine from at surface level, she didn't even really think, or anybody would have really known to look this far into what's being talked about now, right? Like, we don't know what's there if you don't know what's there.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah. There's not, I mean, I think that is the best way to put it. Like, you don't have, there's not a lot of tools for actors. I mean, especially with a story like this, right? There's nothing about it that sounds tawdry or like, oh, there might be more going on here. Like, I mean, it was a book first 3 years prior. So that story was already out there. This story of this family and Michael Orr is already there. His NFL career already happening at this point.
Right.
By the time the movie comes out. So I wouldn't have, I mean, if I were her, I mean, no one's coming after Tim McGraw. Should he give his money? Should he give his paycheck back for also being in the movie?
Well,
I don't know.
Where does the line get drawn? I mean, correct me if I'm
it's ridiculous.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that this whatever sort of campaign exists for her to return her Oscar must be a very small extremists sort of sentiment from Twitter or wherever this is all ongoing. But I can't imagine. Again, you might know more than me. I've heard a little bit of this through the grapevine, but haven't seen anything for myself. But I can't imagine that many, if any, people are beyond social media are taking that idea very seriously. I can understand. I mean, an actor is free to do with their award whatever they want. Like, just I know that Sean Penn has gifted his Oscars to Vladimir Zelensky, and other award winners have done numerous things with their awards in the past. And I would understand if maybe this whole controversy, if it just gave Sandra Bullock a bad taste in her mouth about being awarded for something like this, and she wanted to rescind it, then that's her own decision. But for anybody to suggest that she owes anything or should be entitled to give this back, I think is a little bit ridiculous. She, like you said, this is at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like it maybe to the average person, but it is a job, but it's a performance and a job. And she, if you really want to get technical, it's an adaptation. So she is playing the character who is a real person, but as they are portrayed in this book that they are adapting. And this is regardless of any controversy that's to come out later. So she did her job as it was presented to her at the time that she was at the making the movie. So I feel like that has nothing to do with what's going on right now. It's unfortunate that, things aren't exactly, or may not be, because we don't know yet. It's not all said and done yet, but it's unfortunate that things may not be what they seemed back in 2008, 2009 when the movie's being made, but that's not on Sandra Bullock, if you ask me. And it seems like we're on the same page about that.
Yeah, and I think Quentin Aaron, who played Michael Orr, kind of said it best, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but he was like, if things are the way he is presenting it, then that is unfortunate, and like that should be fixed. Right. But there's also like two sides to every story, and then also he was like, well, Sandra Bullock played a role, and like she was an actor that got a job, and she did a great job. So her work in that movie shouldn't be tarnished because of what we're learning now, which may or may not be totally true. It's just the age we live in where everyone's quick to believe one side because they hear it first and before they get all the facts. And I know it's easier to believe his side first because like, hey, they took him and they did this, and I also maybe understand too if you realize like, oh, that movie made so much money, they must have made so much money. I can believe that a studio gave that family chump change and then
100%
and then ran off with the rest of it. And that is just how things are. And she's not in a position like Sandra Bullock was. Sandra Bullock, as far as like taking a pay cut, but then also taking a percentage of box office profits, I don't think that's greedy on her part. That's just a smart move.
Exactly. Absolutely.
You do the film project a favor, production budget wise, by taking a pay cut, because I think at that time Sandra Bullock can make, I think, 15 million plus for a movie role at that time period, and probably boosted a lot after she won her Oscar. Right. So she could have easily done that. And she did. She helped out the project by taking a pay cut.
This movie could have flopped and she might not have really made enough for it to be worth her time. And so that's a risk that she took. And if it pays off, then, that's, like you said, that's just good business practice.
Yeah. Nothing about that movie, I think, at first seemed like it was going to turn into the hit it turned into. I do understand why it did, because it really did tap into, a lot of people want to see movies like that. That, there's so much like madness going on in the world, and you get this story that's so uplifting, and that makes you feel good when you watch it. And I completely understood why it took off when it took off. But now we're in 2023, and it's unfortunate that there's this family drama that is making everyone look at the movie sideways now. But it's still, at her as a whole, like you said, it is a bunch of more extremist people on Twitter being like, she should give it back. She should have known something.
Exactly. I have a feeling it's a small sect of internet society. This just brings up something that I've, a little tidbit about the movie that I've found fascinating for years, and you might have some more insights on this. I haven't read up on this in a long time, but I did read once upon a time that prior or just after shooting, Sandra Bullock originally thought that her performance was going to be panned, and she didn't think she did a great job with the role. Then come to find out, or she was awarded the Best Actress Oscar that year, so she was very much in the wrong about that. But I've always found that funny. I don't know what about her performance she thought was weak, but it was fantastic.
She was great. I mean, I think the reason she turned the role down, I guess 3 or 4 times, because she didn't know she could play, because like Leigh Anne was like very Christian, and then like I don't think Sandra Bullock, she didn't necessarily identify with all those values and didn't think that she could like bring truth to it or do it justice. So she did turn it down a lot. And it's funny too, because both movies she did like that year were offered to Julia Roberts first. Like Julia Roberts turned down The Proposal and The Blind Side.
Wow.
And they were both big hits for her in 2009, like huge hits. And I think it's interesting that she thought that. I think a lot of actors are more critical of their work than probably we would be, but the first time I saw The Blind Side, I was like, oh, I've actually loved her way before that. I think she was a solid actress way before she did The Blind Side. But I think a lot of people used to think that she got by more on her charm and likability rather than, pure acting talent. And I think that movie proved that. And if that wasn't enough, she doubled down on it with Gravity. Like, yeah, I can act, guys.
Yes.
I can't carry that movie all by myself. So I think it's interesting too that she felt that way. When it's really not the case at all. She's really good in it. And that's what should matter in the end of the day.
Yeah, she's in a stacked year that year too. So okay, here's this is a part where I need a little bit of a breakdown because I haven't educated myself, I guess, a lot on the post Dark Knight phenomenon. So I know that after that year, after the Dark Knight got snubbed of a Best Picture nomination, they changed the rules to allow 10 Best Picture nominations from 5, and it appears that they did the same thing. Was it briefly for acting nominations? Because I see there's 10 Best Actress nominations in front of me right now for that year. But has that always been the case? Because I feel like we only get 5 now.
I think it's only been 5. What did she get nominated for? Other than, is there like something like there's a list of 10 from that year? Or
yeah, so I just looked up 2010 Best Actress nominees. And I'm seeing 10 names here, like among Sandra Bullock's. But we got like the point I'm trying to make is she's in a stacked year against like greats like Meryl Streep and Helen Mirren, and she was competing against Nicole Kidman. And looking at Natalie Portman for Black Swan, I gotta say, like, I think that is probably my favorite performance of the movies I've seen. But I just thought it was odd because I thought that I didn't realize that change in the nominations applied to performances as well. But I just wanted to know.
I didn't really pay attention to that. Yeah, I didn't really pay attention to that either. Actually, I know that she was involved. And like The Blind Side is another example of the 10 Best Picture thing. I think another one that she was in called, I always get the title wrong, I think it's Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close.
Yeah.
Got nominated for Best Picture too. I think more on the technicality of like having more room for, because that movie is actually rotten on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
And I don't even remember it. I saw it once and I don't even remember it at all.
I remember the title, but I've never seen it.
I was like, I had to think about it as I was saying it. It was like Extremely Loud, Incredibly Close, because it was a really long title.
Yeah,
I do love the year that she won her Oscar for The Blind Side. She also won a Razzie for All About Steve, and she accepted the Razzie in person. Which Halle Berry did the same thing for her Razzie for Catwoman. I respect anyone that has, because I don't think Adam Sandler has accepted any of his in person. And he's been awarded several of them.
Well, it's funny. It seems like he tries for them half the time.
Yeah, I know.
I think he'd embrace it.
But yeah, don't worry, Sandra Bullock, who's actually, even before like the stuff that happened with her partner, she was already taking a break to kind of see what her next move was going to be. Like, her last movie was The Lost City, which did really well. And in a time where comedies like that don't do all that well. I mean, I think she still has the star power to make movies sell. And
for sure.
Whenever she comes back to do something, people will appreciate it. And there'll be a lot of people who will be like, just continue to hold your Oscar in whatever place you have it in your house. Shine it up. Right. You deserved it.
Yes, she absolutely does.
No one should have taken it away from you. And this real life story is unfortunate, but has nothing to do with your work in the movie. Like I said, you're not an investigative reporter. The movie wasn't a documentary.
There you go. That's what it really comes down to. She just did her job. She did it really well, and all the power to her. I hope that if she's even seen anything related to this this campaign, I hope she's not taking it seriously, because she is a job well done. She deserves it.
Of course. All right. Controversy number 2. Which one are we doing next?
I really want to talk about this Bonnie Aarons one. For those who don't know, Bonnie Aarons is the actress who portrayed the nun, also known as Valak, in the Conjuring universe. Fantastic physical performance from her, and props equal parts to Bonnie Aarons and the makeup team, whoever's on the makeup department of the Conjuring movies, because that face still freaks me out to this day whenever I see it. But yeah, so maybe I think you know a little bit more about exactly the nature of the controversy, but I know it has something to do with Greedy Studios holding out on what they owe. But do we have any sort of figures or some more insight?
Well, what I thought was interesting about this story was like, well, perfect timing on her part because the Nun 2 is about to come out.
Yeah,
and
there you go. Generate some buzz. Yeah.
And then my buddy texted me. He was like, "So that means she's not in the third one, right? They're just gonna find someone else in case they make a third movie." Because I was like, I don't know. I mean, maybe this will be worked out in a positive way. But it says that
I guess how good this one goes. But
she first appeared as I mean, it's like an iconic image, right? I mean, I think the way she looks as that character, I think we got introduced to her first in The Conjuring 2. That was the first time we saw her, and that image alone was enough to be like enough image and backstory, and enough that there was enough meat there to be like, all right, let's expand that and give it its own movie. And I know that she is not the creative person behind it. She didn't write it or anything like that, but there is something to be said about your physical likeness being part of what is selling a project.
Certainly.
And I think that is what she's kind of getting at, because they said she filed a lawsuit against Warner Brothers, New Line Cinema, and Scope Productions last week in Los Angeles for not receiving what she alleges are her contractually required share of merchandising revenues. That is why it's important, because they're using her likeness to sell merchandise. It says, per the legal complaint obtained by the Times, Warner Brothers exploited the talent, creativity, and likeness of Bonnie Aarons to ignore its financial success, and observed that The Nun, which grossed over $365 million in the worldwide box office revenue, is the highest grossing film in the Conjuring cinematic universe.
Holy.
They said Aarons was compensated $71,500 for her role in the 2018 horror flick and made $175,000 in bonuses tied to the film's box office success, according to the suit. However, Aarons says in her suit that Warner Brothers obscures and hides the true amount of Miss Aarons' rightful share of merchandising revenues. The importance of Miss Aarons' contributions to the success of the films is undeniable. Unlike most horror movie monsters who hide behind a mask or CGI creations, Valak is based on Miss Aarons' physical features, the court documents read. In fact, Peter Safran, a producer for The Conjuring 2 and The Nun, stated, "The moment we saw Miss Aarons with the unique geography of her face, everybody said, this is exactly who we want. This is who it has to be."
Well, there you go. Well said. I mean, I hope Peter Safran isn't, I don't know what his involvement in the suit would be, but it seems like he supplanted the final nail in that coffin of any defense argument.
He's like, I'm busy. I'm doing something DC now.
But I mean, it's unfortunate because this just seems at this point more so now than ever before. Does it seem, at least while it's in, the popular conversation, does this ever just feel like just the standard go-to studio shenanigans? Like just they did, cutting corners, not wanting to separate from their precious profits and giving it to artists that deserve it. If this suit, it has legs and is merited, which I have no issues with saying that I completely believe that's likely the case. Oh, 100%. It wouldn't, I would be surprised if it wasn't that case, but very unfortunate because again, she's like the performance, like not the performance, I should say, but the character of the nun is just one of those ones I feel like if you get another similar looking actor, it's not a really much of like a vocal performance. Like somebody else
it's the physical thing.
Exactly. And, any, a talented makeup or props department could probably dress somebody up and make the part look similar and make it work if they were going to do another one. But I feel like she is a huge part of what has made that character, done all the hard work to make it so recognizable in pop culture. Like the nun is fucking terrifying. Like since it debuted, it's scared the hell out of people worldwide. And pay the woman what she's owed.
I'm glad that you brought up the whole, like, if you could get someone else to do it, it wouldn't be the same. It reminds me of that argument with, like, a lot of people said that after Nick Castle played the Shape in Halloween, like, no one really got that walk right or that physical presence right. They had, like, stuntmen do it. Like, Nick Castle just a regular dude.
Right.
in Halloween. Like he's a friend of John Carpenter, and and everyone's like, "Oh, what did you do? Like, what was your motivation?" And he would ask John Carpenter, like, "What's my motivation?" And John Carpenter's like, "Put this on and just walk from like point A to point B." But like Nick Castle had something very natural in his and his movement that I think Dick Warlock in the second one, because you haven't seen that one, but like it comes close to what Nick Castle did, but you can tell he's a stuntman still.
Right.
And I James Jude Courtney in the new ones, I think he does a good job physically playing Michael Myers, but there's something about like there's not much motivation behind what Nick Castle did. It's just that he was just naturally able to move that way.
And that fits with the character's actual motivations too of Michael Myers. It feels like they go hand in hand.
So like there is something to say about, I think roles like this in Hollywood, people were like, oh, well, anyone can do that. You're just buried under makeup. And like, is that really a performance? But I think a lot of us who like actually love horror movies know that these people take their roles very seriously too. They don't really take them at like, Kane Hodder, who played Jason in multiple Friday the 13th movies, took that role seriously and gained a huge fan base because there are people who love that movies that pay attention to how he walks, how he turns his body, how he tilts his head. They'll be like, yo, he did it better than that guy in the third movie, or he did it better than that guy in the second one. And it sounds like a dumb conversation probably to most people who are listening to it.
Not to horror fanatics,
but not to horror fans, though. They're like, you can't just put like another like thug in the suit and be like, all right, you do it. It might not work.
Certainly.
But I get her point, and like to kind of really go on what they feel like she's missing out on. It's all manners of merchandising, including toys, dolls, decorations, pins, jewelry, t-shirts, socks, bedding, costumes, drinkware, and posters, all using Miss Harrison's likeness.
Did you say good portion bedding?
Bedding.
Who has a nun comforter? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? That is
a true horror fanatic. I wouldn't want that on my bed at all. You probably wake up in the middle of the night with that in your face.
I'm hard to scare. We've been over this, but like if I'm walking out like to grab a glass of water in the middle of my apartment at night and I see any sort of iconography related to the nun, I'm turning right around and diving under the covers. Like she's a freaky lady in that costume, and I would not want a bedspread of that at all. That is hilarious. But no, that merch adds up. I'm sure that I'd want that payday too. I can't blame her one bit.
And it says a significant portion of all merchandise for the Conjuring Cinematic Universe uses Mrs. Aaron's likeness because Alec is its most popular character, and there are no logos associated with the franchise to use on merchandise.
That's a great point. Wow.
And this is different with something like Annabelle, right? I mean, Annabelle was like a physical. I mean, like it's a prop. So I mean, whoever created said prop, I'm sure gets. I mean, I hope. God,
I'm not holding my breath, but yeah.
Oh, and also important part, she alleges that she was promised a pro share of 5% of 50% of the gross receipts from the licensing and merchandising rights, but never got it.
Well, there you go. I guess Warner Brothers has their pockets tight after some recent flops, perhaps.
Yeah, and of course, Warner Brothers and New Line, a representative for them, told the Los Angeles Times they have no comment at this time.
There you go. So, code for caught with our pants down. There's not much we can say about this. I would imagine anyway. I feel like if there was the only other course of action would be to deny it, but I think it says a lot when they choose not to say anything. But.
So is this like on her part? I don't really know. I mean, I've never had to bring up a lawsuit. Like, is it the right timing to do it right before the second movie comes out, or do you wait?
Well, I mean, I do say there's no such thing as bad press. So the fact that if any, regardless of how big newsworthy this gets, if people are talking about, if her name and the Conjuring verse and the Nun 2 are in the zeitgeist around the time that it's out in theaters, I feel like that will only help or motivate people maybe to go see it, maybe even to support her. I don't feel like it's, I don't think it's a kind of controversy story that would deter people from going to the movie. If it was something more of like, what Ezra Miller was involved with before The Flash, we might see something like that reflect in the box office performance, but I don't feel like this is going to hurt the movie at all. That's my take. How do you feel?
I don't think it will either. And I wonder if there's like a groundswell of like horror support thinking like, hey, like maybe she has legs to win her lawsuit and they like go see it
the
in
horror
hopes that, like,
community has come together with stuff like this before, so I wouldn't be
'cause, like,
surprised.
right, because like if the sequel does well, that drives more merchandise sales. And if she happens to win this lawsuit, then maybe that is a potential windfall for her if she
Yeah.
is to win. I mean, the story was big enough to gain traction that like all the major trades picked it up. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't know her real name until this story broke. So
that's awesome.
There's that, and I agree with her though. I think it would be really strange one to be promised something by a studio and not get it, but then also see her like this everywhere around town at stores on merchandise, and then knowing that you're not, it's you, and you're not getting even a piece of that, and they are getting all of it.
I hope that she gets, the recognition that she deserves, and people show up. I'm surprised, not because I actually like The Nun. I have a soft spot for it. I don't think it's by any means like the greatest horror movie in the Conjuringverse by any means, but I'm surprised to hear you say that it's the most profitable Conjuring movie. I thought that would go to Conjuring 2.
I thought so too. But I remember when we talked about The Nun, when we were talking about the trailer, I saw how much it made worldwide. I just didn't know that beat even the Conjuring 2 worldwide. But that is a testament of how big that universe is, because it's been very lucrative since the first Conjuring came out. And I had to write a feature about the Conjuring universe, and it's just unique in the way that it really was all these like small little details that like they were like, hey, like that one image that you saw, let's see if we can expand on that and make that a story. Like, Annabelle wasn't a huge part of that first introduction that we saw of her, but they managed to turn that into that's been 3 movies now, I think.
Yep. That's right.
And we of course are getting more Conjuring movies. There might be a Conjuring series, and Nun 2 is coming out. If that does well, who knows, we might get a third one. So yeah, it is interesting in that I'm sure it is motivated by money, but something about it feels a bit more organic than most kind of like, let's expand this kind of movie stories go. I
feel like that is rooted in the fact that for the most part, these are from real case files of the characters involved. So they actually have a motivation to adapt these things that regardless of what you believe in happened, there's at least documentation of this stuff. So I feel like that is definitely something that adds to the charm of these movies, that they're not just like, oh, we made one that made a lot of money, let's shit out another one in a year or two. Right. There's actually stuff that could be built from a foundation with these stories. And I feel like that ultimately is what's led to the success, because there's something to draw on. But yeah, undoubtedly she has been a huge part of the success of that universe. I would like to see,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'd like to see her like maybe join another series or franchise that pays her due, and I think she'd be a great fit for like a season of like American Horror Story or something. I think she'd fit really well.
That's funny, because that show just like released its first teaser for season 2. I've tapped out of that show a long time ago, but
it's going on too long.
I saw the teaser. Kim Kardashian is on this season.
Oh my god, that's right. Don't remind me.
I like Emma Roberts. She's on this season too, but you know what? I have a friend. Our friend Claudia works for FX, and she's involved a lot in like she works with the marketing team on American Horror Story. So I love the looks of their teasers and their trailers, because it is really unique.
Right.
It just never. After season 3, it just never lived up to that promise. Right, Like Murder House, the first season's great. Asylum is a little weird, but at least it's still like well written. And then season 3, Coven, is just fun. But then after that, it just goes off the rails. And
really,
I honestly didn't know it was still a thing until.
The later seasons have not generated the hype. I remember like when I was in high school, there was quite a big fan base. A lot of people were on that show. I never got into it, but it was right up my alley. Just never found the time to seek it out. But there's definitely a few seasons of that I'd be interested in watching. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe somebody else picks up Bonnie Aarons and makes her feel appreciated. I think that'd be nice.
I mean, it's a testament of how that character looks, right? Because I think when people saw The Conjuring 2, that was like, there's a lot in that movie to be scared of, but that image, that first image is like, I remember when I saw that in theaters, I was like, that's creepy.
And with I feel the score for The Nun is fantastic. Like, not The Nun as a character, like that eerie little like whistling sound that you see when, I don't even know it's more like a moan Like when you
Yeah.
see the painting of her, oh my god, it freaks me out. I think the score freaks me out more than the image of her, but
Exactly.
combined though, it's terrifying. But you're right.
Yes,
Is
and-
she? Yeah.
At the end of the day, give the woman her due, especially.
right.
I mean, and this one feels like not like a money grab lawsuit. It seems like she's genuinely like, hey, this is what
Feels
I'm
pretty
supposed to get,
genuine.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not by
and
any
so-
means like a big, money making A-lister. Like this is a
Yeah.
a woman that puts in does great work, looks fantastic in the
Yeah.
role, and just is
And is
probably
proud
getting
of her
bullied by the
work
studio.
in it.
Yeah.
Very proud of her work in it. Like, I mean, I've seen that. So it's not like she's shunning anything about it. She just wants her due, and that's she deserves it. Give it to her. I don't know.
Well,
Warner Brothers is slowly becoming like a studio. I'm like, ugh.
I know they're just joining the ranks of all the other ones. I mean, there's not too many feel-good stories about big movie studios these days, but rest assured, in the off chance Bonnie Aarons is listening, know that you have the support of the back of the Blockbuster crew, and we're rooting for you.
Yes,
Pay the woman.
Exactly. Pay the woman. All right, controversy number 3. Also stupid, but we're gonna cover it.
Yes.
Anyway. I think we all saw the teaser for Maestro, which is going to be a Netflix movie. By the way, the first controversy I saw was people complaining that Netflix is still not releasing these like Oscar baity movies in the theaters like nationwide for a long time.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that.
I mean,
Like,
it is what it is. So, but the the backlash that came out of this right away, soon after that, was Bradley Cooper, who is directing it and starring in it as Leonard Bernstein. He caught backlash for wearing a large prosthetic nose to portray him in the upcoming biographical romance film. So much so that the controversy sparked the latest discourse about Jewface in Hollywood, and basically saying that the look is stereotypical or inauthentic portrayal of Jewish people in film. This feels like another just like Twitter group thing that kind of like sprung up out of nowhere. I'm gonna start with the Anti-Defamation League does not think so.
Okay.
And this is a notable Jewish organization fighting against bias and bigotry. They came to Cooper's defense, saying that his depiction of Bernstein is not anti-Semitic. They said throughout the history, Jews were often portrayed in anti-Semitic films and propaganda as evil caricatures with large hooked noses. They said in the statement, the film, which is a biopic on the legendary conductor Leonard Bernstein, is not that. And that if for them to call it that is not fair to the project. Leonard Bernstein's 3 children, Jamie, Alexander, and Nina Bernstein, also said that they are throwing their support behind Bradley Cooper and the film. And they said this. Yeah, they said in the statement, Bradley Cooper included the 3 of us along every step of his amazing journey as he made his film about our father. We were touched to the core to witness the depth of his commitment, his loving embrace of our father's music, and the sheer open-hearted joy he brought to his exploration. They said it breaks our hearts to see any misrepresentations or misunderstandings of his efforts. It happens to be true that Leonard Bernstein had a nice big nose. Bradley chose to use makeup to amplify his resemblance, and we're perfectly fine with that. We're also certain that our dad would have been fine with it as well. Any striking complaints against this issue strike us above all as disingenuous attempts to bring a successful person down a notch, a practice we observe all too often perpetrated on our own father. At all times during the making of this film, we could feel the profound respect and, yes, the love that Bradley brought to his portrait of Leonard Bernstein and his wife, our mother, Felicia. We feel so fortunate to have had this experience with Bradley, and we can't wait for the world to see his creation. Okay. And once I heard that, that was pretty much all I did. That was all I needed after that.
Not nearly as contentious as I thought it would be. I hadn't really known how much was like anti or pro Brad Cooper using a prosthetic nose. Now, I did hear one thing, and this is for very well could be unsubstantiated. I can't even remember where I heard this, but I did hear that apparently, again, take this with a grain of salt because I don't even know what my source is on this, but that Bradley Cooper's nose was bigger than Leonard Bernstein's to begin with, and the prosthetic nose wasn't needed, but which I thought was interesting. And I kind of like have been reserving my opinions on this whole controversy just because I am not that familiar with, I didn't know if this controversy was being levied by the Jewish community, and I didn't feel like I should lend my opinion to something I wasn't that educated on. So I've been waiting for an opportunity like this to discuss it before I really share a thought. But I mean, hearing what you just read seems like it's pretty open and shut. If the family and that organization that you just, we're talking about don't feel like it's an issue, then I feel, again, this is probably just a case like with the Sandra Bullock radical community just wanting, justice for everything.
Well, there is one, like the one person, I mean, because like the screenshot you sent me last week mentioned someone named Tracy Ann Oberman. She is an actress, best known for her roles in Friday Night Dinner and The Toast of London. I've never heard of her, but she was one of the first to condemn him for wearing a prosthetic nose to portray Leonard Bernstein. She said that she's heard in the Jewish community that people have complained about it, and she shared an image of the actor and captioned the post. All actors should be able to play any part with their skill. However, we are living in times when there is huge sensitivity and debate over ethnic and minority representation. If Bradley Cooper greenlights your film to play the Jewish composer Bernstein, and you want him over a Jewish A-lister, which was another issue because Bradley Cooper's not Jewish, who could equally play that role, then let Bradley Cooper's acting be so magnificent and truthful that the character of Bernstein shines through what he already looks like. If he needs to wear a prosthetic nose, then that is, to me and many others, the equivalent of blackface or yellowface. And that wasn't just her. A lot of people I saw mentioned that as it being similar to that. She also said this too, what I thought was interesting. She said Cillian could play Oppenheimer because he looks like Oppenheimer and can get the power of the man's story and Jewishness through the power of his acting. And that is the difference he thinks between, what Bradley Cooper. And by the way, we're basing this on the trailer. It's not even the full movie. We haven't even seen the movie.
That's a fantastic point you just brought up. I didn't even think this whole controversy didn't even bring into mind that Cillian was also portraying a Jewish man, and nobody seemed to care. So it's just it really comes down to the nose. I mean, obviously, you may have some Jewish people that don't like that a non-Jew is playing a Jewish person, but and that I don't know that I'm kind of like mum on. I don't know what the right answer.
Yeah, I don't really know either. I don't either. I'm like, I'm sure it's happened a lot, right?
Yeah, but as far as the nose and the prosthetics, like it's not like people who are, being portrayed haven't had their corresponding actor use makeups or CGI or effects in some way to enhance that performance before. So I don't know why all of a sudden this has become the issue. I mean, the prosthetic nose is, I'm sure, in no way, shape, or form used to in any way be a negative, but just like the kid said in that letter, to enhance the feature. So, I mean,
I think for Bradley Cooper, he just really wanted to like have it be like you weren't. It might sound stupid, but like you weren't seeing Bradley Cooper's nose. Like you were really seeing what you thought could be Leonard Bernstein more than.
Glad you said that, because I watched a trailer before we started filming. I was like, that he looks unrecognizable. Like that. I wouldn't want to be watching Brad Cooper in this role. With any good biopic, you want that actor to dissolve into the performance, and I feel like he absolutely does. In the minute and a half I saw him.
Yeah. And so I wanted to find what you sent me too, because what you sent me the first time to kind of pitch this story a bit, because what she said, I get what she's saying, but I also think that I read what she said first, and I saw what everyone on Twitter was saying, but then once she got his kids in there going like, you guys are tripping, calm down.
Yeah.
And then you get the Anti-Defamation League like, no guys, we fight for a lot, we're not gonna pick this battle. Like,
I think that says a lot.
I think that does say a lot. And the thing is, I think this is going to get brought up again the closer the movie comes out.
Especially if it's up for any awards.
I think it's going to be a big debate. But I think at the end of the day, Bradley Cooper as a person, director, actor, he got the support of his family throughout this whole process, and they're supporting him publicly now, which I think is really important. Like, not just while they made that, they didn't have to write a statement and come to his defense, and they did. Right. And I think that says a lot, about the experience they had, being involved with him making a movie about their father.
Yes.
And they felt the need to defend him because they're like, for anyone to kind of insinuate that he had any ill will or ill intention by, using prosthetics to really look like him, then you guys are all wrong. We want to clear that up. And I think that was good of them to do, I think. So,
I commend them for coming to his defense. Well, I also look at this too as like, and again, I'm oblivious and ignorant to the behind the scenes in terms of the rights, but do we see anybody else campaigning to bring Leonard Bernstein's story to life, or should we appreciate the fact that, Jew or not, Brad Cooper is, paying attention and bringing his story and his life to what looks to be like an amazing production. I feel like that's something to be grateful for. Again, ethnicity or not. I mean, sure, there's a conversation about the ramifications of Jew face, and it's one that I think is relatively not new in terms like historically, but not one that nearly gets the attention of like black or yellow face. So I feel like in terms of like the popular conversation or discussion, it's one that seems kind of novel, at least to me. I've never even heard of this. I get this. As soon as you said it, I know what you mean, but I've never heard of it.
I heard of it a little bit with Tropic Thunder and Tom Cruise, Les Grossman.
Oh, that didn't even occur to me. But he's fictional, isn't he?
But he's fictional, and also like, but he also they think plays into the way he looks, the way he acts, into just Jewish stereotypes.
That's funny. I didn't get that impression.
But then also, this is something with Tropic Thunder because I had to write about that movie too. Is I didn't feel that a lot when it came out. I feel that more now.
It was over my head. I just watched it.
The movie was controversial when it came out, but I don't think it was spoken the way it is now, where it seems like it was like, oh, let's re-examine this, like 15 years later. Is this movie appropriate?
Cultural zeitgeist has changed in those 15 years too.
I'm like, please, like, don't ruin a good movie. It's funny, and like the reason why it's funny is because it's not making fun of certain cultures. Like when people look at the Robert Downey Jr. blackface thing, it's not making fun of blackface. It is making fun of actors who think they are that dedicated to a part that they would have to do something like that in order to gain awards attention. And then the whole, like, I remember when the movie came out, they also were, they didn't like the whole Simple Jack thing in that movie because they thought it made fun of the mentally handicapped. And like the joke isn't about the mentally handicapped. It is about like actors who take roles like to take roles like that, thinking that they're going to win awards for them. So that's the joke. The joke is that. But I mean, everyone's re-examining all these things like years later, of course. But yeah, another controversy, number 3, not quite a controversy to me, especially after his kids came out.
Agreed. Yeah, I gotta say it's more gray than black and white, like the other two are for me.
Right.
I at least from what I understand from the limited exposure I've had to the people that are bringing their opinion to the controversy, it doesn't seem like it's like people are all up in arms and are like a mob at the gate looking for Bradley Cooper's head or anything. It doesn't seem like it's that malicious, but more that these people want their opinions heard. And I can't say that I think that it's ill-intended. I think they're entitled to their opinion, especially the Jewish community, obviously. But that's what kind of I think I like about this discussion. It doesn't seem like an open and shut one. Well, it does in terms of like because of the kids and the Anti-Defamation League, like you said. But again, of course, anyone in the Jewish community, especially, is entitled to their opinion about what they feel about a non-Jew portraying a Jew. But I mean, I think that just adds to the discussion, and I'm interested to see how this changes over the course of the award season. Yeah, definitely.
I think it is going to be a big part of the conversation in the award season. It seems like one of those movies that depending on how it's received, I think it really will be in that conversation. So it will be interesting to see if this gets brought up again once there's more attention on it. So but again, I hope Bradley Cooper made a great movie, and I don't think he should worry about anything.
That's
exactly. I mean, that has to suck though. You put out this teaser trailer for something you're proud of, and
then this is what is gleaned from it.
And that's what comes out of it. It's like, he's probably worked so hard on this project, like, to get it right. And, and I'm glad there's a pocket of people that were just talking about how good it looks, even from that teaser. They thought it looked great. So at least there's that too. But
I didn't even know either that until the trailer that it was a Netflix. If I had heard this before, I had forgotten, but that it was a Netflix original. So props to them for looking like they've actually made another quality production. I know those are at least to me few and far between. We get a few a year amongst a big pile of shit, but this one looks like they really honestly it reminded me a lot of Mank from a couple of years ago.
I got that vibe too.
So totally good for them.
All right, well, we got our 3 controversial stories out of the way.
There you go, guys. Let us know what you guys think about each and every one of these controversies, please, if you guys want to take share.
Yeah, and I think this is the time when we say welcome to the OC, bitch. Is
yes.
that where
yes, there you go. Great callback. Man, there was a lot of fights in these 2 episodes.
Oh man, there's a lot of fights in those first like 27.
I bet. Man, 27 episode season
of season 1.
Insane.
I looked it up. Season 1 had 27, season 2 had 24, season 3 had 25, season 4 had 16.
Okay, 16
So, yeah.
I can get behind. If not for this lengthy
And I think by
season, I
then,
would jump into this show, but I'm like, I know I'm not going to make the time to see all that.
Yeah, by season 4, the ratings were like not great, and I think that's why
Okay.
it got cut short like that.
I want to let's bookmark that. I want to get your opinion on why that is, maybe a little bit later.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, well, I'll let you start.
Oh yeah, I will just in case people don't know what the OC is, it is a teen drama television series created by Josh Schwartz, and it originally aired on the Fox network in the United States from August 5th, 2003 to February 22nd, 2007, running a total of 4 seasons and 92 episodes. The OC, for those that don't know, is short for Orange County, the location in Southern California.
I did not know that for years.
Oh Jesus! And no one called it that before this show, so it's not like it's we were all calling it the OC. People just called it Orange County. And
right?
The show popularized the OC.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a location in Southern California in which the series is set. The show centers on Ryan Atwood, a troubled and gifted young man from a broken home who is adopted by the wealthy and philanthropic Sandy and Kirsten Cohen. Ryan and his adopted brother Seth, a socially awkward, quick-witted teenager, deal with life as outsiders in the high-class world of Newport Beach. Ryan and Seth spend much time navigating their relationships with the girl next door, Marissa Cooper, and Seth's childhood crush, Summer Roberts. Storylines typically deal with the culture clash between the idealistic Cohen family and the shallow, materialistic, and closed-minded community in which they reside. The series includes elements of postmodernism and functions as a mixture of melodrama and comedy. When the show premiered, it premiered with high ratings and was one of the most popular new dramas of the 2003-2004 television season, and it was the most popular drama of the season in ages 18 to 34. Makes sense. Yep. It was widely revered as a pop cultural phenomenon and received mostly positive reception from critics. However, as we mentioned earlier, ratings declined as the show went on, and the low ratings led to its cancellation in early 2007, even after an online petition that gained over 700,000 signatures was signed. It made stars out of most of its series regulars, at least the young core 4. Ben McKenzie, who played Ryan, Misha Barton played Marissa, Adam Brody played Seth. Rachel Bilson, who was only a guest star at first, plays Summer. Her and Melinda Clark, who played Julie Cooper, started as guest stars, and they became so popular with fans in that first season that they made them series regulars. I think by episode like 11 or 12, they become series regulars.
Did we?
Even though they're on there a bit.
Especially in the first 2 episodes, I think we see lots of them. Did we cover something with Rachel Bilson in it earlier this year?
We talked about I brought up something with her and Hayden Christensen in an episode with you, and I was like,
about her.
I was like, yeah, like he was with Rachel Bilson. And I was like, oh, she was on the OC and she played Summer, and there was this whole,
see. That's probably where.
Yeah, that's where it was.
I remember that name. She's a memorable name.
And then also the adult characters. Why the show was also popular is that it catered to the storylines that they did show. Not only catered to the young audience, they also did make it a point to portray the adult storylines as well, which featured Peter Gallagher as Sandy Cohen, Kelly Rowan as his wife Kirsten, and I mentioned Melinda Clark as Julie Cooper, and then Tate Donovan as Jimmy Cooper. So yeah, there was a lot going on. There's 27 episodes in season 1.
Wow. We've come a
long
way.
You watched the first 2.
Yes.
What did you think? Well, we'll go with the pilot first. What did you think of the first episode?
I think there's a lot of great foundation in that show. You know what? It wasn't until you started reading the premise that I really realized how much this show is just a wider, more modern take on The Outsiders, which I'm a big fan of. I really like that. And I like the modern setting of that story is really great. Although I don't think I don't think he's meant to be, at least maybe in late. Again, my perspective, everything I'm going to be saying about this in this episode is based on 2 episodes of viewing. So I don't know if things change, but I can get behind Ryan as a character, though I don't think he's a perfect antagonist and that you're meant to really think that he is, every decision or action that he makes is the right one. And I like that he's an imperfect protagonist. Really like his dynamic with Seth, his adopted brother. That's his name, right?
Yeah, Seth. Yeah, Adam Brody.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I was wondering if maybe I was thinking of the actor's name, but think they're great together. Misha Barton, who now I can finally put a face to the name, was great, and they have a believable chemistry right from the get-go. It does remind me, and there were many parts in the pilot that it's very much a product of its time. There were several movies that I feel like borrowed or maybe were influenced, or maybe this movie or show were influenced by at this time. Like, what is that series? Never Back Down. Like it reminded me a lot of that.
One?
Yeah, exactly. Where you have like the pot, and even like the Tokyo Drift, where you have like the popular pretty girl who's got the dickhead jock boyfriend who falls for the new guy on the scene, and those guys beef and fight all the time. It's very popular this time in the 2000s. But it's nice and nostalgic to see these tropes that used to be so popular again. And it fits, I think, in the not to use this word again, but like the zeitgeist of the 2000s, melodramatic TV.
It really did. I mean, I failed to mention, because you mentioned the jockey asshole boyfriend. I forgot to mention Chris Carmack, who plays Luke, because I mean, he does get to utter it's pretty iconic amongst fans of that show. It's a silly line.
Yeah.
But that welcome to the OC bitch line is still, I mean, they named their podcast after it when they were doing their whole rewatch of the first four seasons. It is very much a product of its time.
But in a good way.
A good way. So what I remember about it most when it started, there were a lot of successful teen shows before the OC. Like in the last episode when we were talking about this a little bit, like we brought up Beverly Hills 90210, which was also on Fox. Like, that was the early 90s through the 2000s, early like 2000, 2001 maybe is when that show ended. It premiered like 1990, so it was on for a long time. And then in the middle of that, you have the emergence of like the WB. So then you get teen genre programming like Buffy and Charmed. And then you get teen melodrama, like Dawson's Creek and Felicity and all that stuff that kind of started around that time in the late 90s, early 2000s. I guess the difference between watching those shows is I wasn't in high school when I started watching Dawson's Creek.
Okay.
It felt very much, I felt detached from it, even though I was entertained by it. It was still, I was like, I'm not literally living this life. I mean, I guess it's and then of course Dawson's Creek is so idealistic in the way it's approached, even though Dawson's Creek at the time was controversial because the teens talked about sex and stuff like that. And compared to other shows that followed, it is as wholesome can be.
Okay.
So it really isn't anything that like controversial in like the grand scheme of things. The difference between the OC is that I was a year out of high school when the show started.
Okay.
So I felt like I had already experienced some of this stuff. So it was a lot more fun to watch. Even though, I mean, I guess like in this first season, by the time they do go to high school after the whole summer episodes are over, like I went to Maricosa High School in Manhattan Beach. It's not too dissimilar from Newport Harbor in the show. So I was like, all right, this feels very similar to what I experienced in those 4 years of high school. And then I'm also aware of how popular those other shows were, but this was the first time I actually saw a show like this take off in real time, where
I see
it felt like by the third or fourth episode, everyone was talking about it amongst our friends. And then I think I told you about that event that they had in Hermosa Beach when the show started. There was like maybe 4 episodes in, and they flooded the pier with people that were just trying to see them. And that was only 4 episodes in. It got popular really, really fast.
I see why it hooks you from the get-go. Like you want to see more of these characters, even just 2 episodes in. And I do, but I know it's unfortunate I won't be fitting this into my schedule, but I wish I was.
I feel like I'm just gonna like filter one every other month. It's like, here you go.
Yeah, like, feel free to. I would try. Maybe this will be like a years long watch or months long.
It might take you that long to finish season 1.
It's funny though, because I mentioned, I don't know if I had mentioned this during another episode, if it was off camera, but my best friend at the time, way back when I was in elementary school, had 2 older sisters who were fans of this show and One Tree Hill at the same time. And I think I would blend plot points from either show because I was so young and not so much paying attention to them. But there were bits that I feel like way back in my deep memory that I was picking up on while watching the pilot that I must have seen way back as a youngin' watching Matt's sisters watch the show on cable. But I feel like there were some some elements of the show that felt very, very familiar to me, and it was nice to be back and seeing it. I felt like I'd seen this episode in like a past life, and it was cool to be back. But Ryan was very familiar. Yeah, certainly. I would not have known what the hell was going on back when when I ever had seen this before. I'm talking, I would have been in 4th or 5th grade, elementary school for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was cool to see it again and actually have a grasp of what was going on.
Yeah, Ryan, as played by Ben McKenzie, who I think over time got more credit that he deserved, because I think it's hard when you're playing off of Adam Brody, Adam Brody. I know that's only 2 episodes that you saw with Seth. Adam Brody is, from what we know, he improv a lot on that show. They wrote
impressive.
The cool thing about the OC, I think over time, even in those first few episodes, once they got to know the actors, they would write for them. So they were like, hey, like this guy is really quirky, he's quick, let's write his dialogue that way. And eventually Adam Brody is just improv because he knows Seth so well. He's like, all right, well, I'll take what you wrote and try to expand on that. And if you use it, you do. And if you don't, you don't. And you'll see, I mean, you would see a lot in more episodes that he is just kind of, it feels like he's just riffing. And they're just letting him go because he's just funny. And then Ryan has to play, or Ben McKenzie has to play straight to that. But eventually they even give him a sense of humor, but it's more of like a straight kind of deadpan, like sense of humor to Seth's kind of more like, flamboyant out there. And it's funny because Seth is supposed to be the nerd, but I mean, Adam Brody is not.
Doesn't come across that way though.
Adam Brody is probably cooler than most people. At least that character is cooler than most people you would probably meet in real life. But they do their best to portray him as a nerd. No girlfriend, pining over some girl that doesn't even know who he is. And that is a main
after. Oh my god!
And they made his boat. How'd you feel? Yeah, how'd you feel about that when you saw that? You were like, oh, that's weird,
corny and cheesy, but in line with the character. So it was interesting choice. But there's another part though that like just kind of adds, because I mean, at first glance, it's like, okay, this guy is obviously kind of dorky. This girl, and he says right in that same conversation, she doesn't know who he is, but then. Later, when in the second, I think it's the second episode, when it's is it Summer is the girl that he
is he talking about when it's her birthday?
Yeah, and he goes, oh yeah, tell her it's her birthday, and she goes, says it to her, and she goes, ew, who is that? she says thanks.
She says thanks. That was great. Yeah.
And then that builds on the earlier part of him, his character trait of being in love with this girl that doesn't know he exists, and that kind of makes the whole naming the boat add to his character once you get a little bit more of what he's like and their dynamic. But at first, when I heard that, I was like, okay, man.
Yeah. It's just funny, too, in the second episode, there's the other birthday joke where they're trying to, like, sneak out. And she's like, oh, I'm on my way to my friend's birthday. And then he realizes that somebody's like, oh, Summer's birthday is not till Wednesday. And she just looks at him like, how do you know that? He's like, never mind.
Or so I was told. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was told. Yeah.
He is witty.
He's very witty. But yeah, their dynamic is really cool throughout the whole show because they're so opposite, but they form this like really legitimate bond with each other. And Josh Schwartz had said that he's gotten a lot of credit from other like just guys who said that they never really saw like what people would later call like bromance with their best friends. Like he was like, I've never really seen like positive like male relationships like that amongst friends on shows like that at the time. They either would like kind of make fun of it or kind of like throw in some kind of inappropriate like gay joke in there to like kind of like soften it a little bit, but he was like, I got a lot of credit for portraying them as they genuinely cared for each other, they liked each other, they loved each other as family, they became brothers. And he was like, a lot of people said they didn't see that at the time, and I guess that's true. I mean, I guess on Dawson's Creek you had Pacey and Dawson, but that friendship was also very uneven because Dawson was kind of a bitch to him sometimes, so like it was really not I guess this was one of the first ones where they were portraying like a really genuine like high school male relationship on TV that was just like really authentic, and they just had each other's backs, but in very different ways. There's a lot that Seth could do for Ryan but there's probably more that Ryan could do for Seth in terms of like I can protect him and all that stuff. But Seth was also smart and witty and like and very self-aware and could tell him like the ins and outs of how awful that whole Newport scene is, even though he lives in it. Right. So like their character dynamics are really interesting together, and they wore the entire run of the show. That was like the most consistent relationship on that show was the
Okay.
friendship between those two guys. And then also pretty consistent, even though they had issues. It sucks because I think on the first 2 episodes you get the idea that maybe Kirsten is kind of bitchy because she doesn't want him to stay there at the house.
Right.
She has reservations about it. But by the 3rd episode, he does end up staying. That's when they decide to let him live with the family. But she even her relationship with Sandy is like a constant too. Like they are they have problems, but they're the kind of couple that talks them out, and it's not like a huge it would be easy to kind of break them up and like do something really soapy and silly with them. But it was also nice to see like 2 mature adults who had a really solid foundation that could actually talk
Work
about their
through
problems.
Yeah.
But I was like, when you were telling me that you're watching the first 2, and I watched episode 3 before, and I was like, oh yeah, she gets better here. I mean, she actually learns to support him, and then she becomes one of his, even more than Sandy, like one of his biggest defenders. And by the time, even at the end of season 1, there's a lot of stuff that happens with him, and she has his back completely. And it's such a big change from how it starts.
Right.
She's like, I don't know if I want this boy in our house.
Well, it's funny that dynamic. I would have expected it to be flip flopped, and the more motherly figure welcome Ryan into the home, and have like maybe the father be a little skeptical about his presence in the family and trying to protect the family first, and be weary about who this kid is, and does he really want him around his son? Is he a bad influence? But to have those roles flipped and it be Sandy. And I understand the dynamic. He meets him as his attorney and feels for the kid and relates to him because he mentions in a few lines that he grew up, and if somebody hadn't looked out for him when he was Ryan's age, then he wouldn't have had the future that he ended up having. So I think the dynamic's really written well. I was just surprised that it was Sandy and not Kirsten that kind of snowballed the getting Ryan into the family. But I think that was really well done.
Yeah, I thought it was well done too. And because a lot of people, there's been a lot of websites and trades when they talk about the OC when it was on, and then like people that done retrospectives on it. Peter Gallagher is constantly voted as one of the best TV dads ever, because they just like the way that he portrayed Sandy, and like just a very like honest, because he, it is interesting to kind of have this guy who lives in that lifestyle, but he's not from it. I mean, he makes it very clear that like Kirsten is the breadwinner. He's a public defender. He doesn't make a lot of money. She's the one that kind of allowed them to have this life together, and he definitely didn't grow up in it. But the way Peter Gallagher plays it, he's so natural. I guess like he doesn't. He feels like a real dad that you could be. Yeah. He there's something very genuine about him, and like the way I think he mentions it in either episode 2 or 3, where he kind of feels like he wants to help Ryan because he felt like he was him at one point. Like that's why he really wanted to make sure that he didn't end up in the system and like in foster care and all that, because like what we see at the beginning of the episode, Ryan, it comes from a very troubled upbringing. What's funny is that his brother Trey, in the first episode, he's stealing a car with his brother Trey. Season 2, when they actually bring Trey back, and there's a big arc for season 2 with Trey, Logan Marshall Green plays him, and he was
no way.
And that was one of his first big roles, and he actually was doing season 2 of the OC kind of at the same time. I guess he was on 24 then. He was doing a guest spot on that show too.
Okay. Love Logan Marshall.
That was one of his first big things that he got. And he was actually on the podcast too. He came on and talked to Rachel Bilson and Melinda Clark about his time on the show. But yeah, he has a brother that goes to jail for stealing a car, and then of course his mom is all screwed up and alcoholic. Yeah. And they do their best to kind of show that like Ryan is very different from where he's gonna end up. Right. And I think they do a good job of that in those first 3 episodes, and then you just get more hints of it as the show goes on, because they introduce more of his background and more people from his past, and those worlds kind of collide often. Right. Okay. Especially specifically in season 1. I think by season 2 he's fully immersed in living that lifestyle, but as himself, like not trying to be something that he's not. He still has to just figure out how to maintain who he is while also still adjusting to a Newport Beach way of life, I guess. But yeah, some of those things are like those. I think those dynamics are done. I mean, there's a lot you have to do in the pilot. You have to be able to hook someone in by the end of the first episode.
Exactly.
And there's a lot that kind of goes on in that first. I do love that the first half of it, by the time he gets to Newport, it's the whole like fancy kind of like that like dinner party thing in the fashion show.
Yes.
That they have him go to, and then the second half is the party that he goes to. And like they even like play that whole line where like they go to the dinner party and Seth is like, "Oh, welcome to the dark side," because this is not. And then when they go to the real like house party, and then Ryan says that to him, he's like, "Oh, welcome to the dark side." Like that's more of a lifestyle he's used to, even though it's still completely different
setting, but same sort
setting.
of idea.
Yeah.
And no, he's quick to make a name for himself in the at this house party. A lot of punches thrown from this one character. I thought it was, done a good job showing kind of what kind of character he was going to be. Someone that was probably raised a little rough, quick to defend, and definitely has an eye out for Seth. Really like though that like he probably had every reason to not want to be there. Seth even kind of calls him out in front of some people about not being really who he says he is.
He's drunk.
Yeah, exactly. But then you can, even in one episode, there's a few scenes that really kind of just show you the kind of character that Ryan really is when he is kind of sulking around and notices Seth getting beat up and picked on down by the bonfire. He's very quick to go stand up for him, even though he kind of takes some lashes himself. And right from that scene alone, you can just kind of, I think it's a scene that's meant to inspire a sort of sympathy for that character who's made the right choices, even though he's often caught in the wrong sort of situation or a bad situation, or could easily make the wrong choice, but in his heart is a better person than he really should be based on how he is raised. And that I think is just a naturally sympathetic trait for what will inevitably be, I'm sure, a fantastic lead character in that show. I mean, I really liked every moment that I saw. Is it Ben McKenzie?
Ben McKenzie,
he was really good. And very, very familiar. I know that my youthful brain remembered seeing him on screen way back in the day. I don't think I know him from anything else though. Or would I?
Yeah, so after this show, I thought they all were pretty successful, but Ben McKenzie stayed with TV. He's in a movie called Junebug with Amy Adams. She got nominated for an Oscar for it. He's pretty good in it. But he was on this show called Southland. It was like a police series that was on for a few years after this, and then he was on Gotham.
Who's he playing Gotham?
He was Gordon, so he was a lead again on another Fox series after this.
Okay,
and he's married to Marina Baccarin, who was in Deadpool and Deadpool 2. She's the girlfriend.
No way.
And she actually had a role, a guest star role on the OC, but I don't think they shared scenes with each other.
Okay.
But they ended up officially meeting when they did Gotham together, and they ended up getting married, and they have kids now. So he has a pretty solid career after this. They all mostly did. Misha Barton,
I was looking her up. She's an interesting. Yeah.
Well, she's an interesting case because she is the youngest person on the show. She was 17 when they did the pilot.
Oh wow!
And but a lot of people said that were making the show because she was from New York, or like she was doing work in New York, that she was more adult and poised than a lot of them.
I got that sense.
Even though she was the youngest, they said that she carried herself not like she was 17. And
I didn't get that impression at all.
And by the time that the show really hit, Misha Barton was the one that was on the cover. Like they all got covers of magazines together, right? But she was the one that got singled out because she's also very skinny. She has a model frame, so everybody wants to put their clothes on her.
In the 2000s, I imagine.
Yeah. So she became really popular really quick, and like most people who become really popular really quick, and you're on a show that is demanding of all your time, you want to do other stuff, and then you start to feel like, oh, this thing is preventing me from doing other things I want to do. And I think you start to rebel. So I think by early season 3, they said she was like coming to work late. She was partying a lot. She was in that she was kind of in that scene of like
early 20s and working in Hollywood.
Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, that kind of it crowd.
Right.
More so than the rest of them. Even Rachel Bilson, who was also popular. I mean, it was just Misha Barton was just everywhere. from the start, and it's because she's a beautiful girl. I mean, I think
Yes.
that has a lot to do with it. There's been a lot of back and forth on her talent on the show.
Okay.
I rewatched the whole thing in 2020 when the pandemic happened and everything shut down.
Nice.
I had a different view of her in that rewatch than I did when I used to watch the show live. I used to not like her that much. I used to think that she couldn't act that well.
Okay.
And then when I watched it in 2020, I was like, well, she's playing like a really fickle, confused, messed up teenager. And I think she does sell that pretty well, especially in that first. I mean, her family goes through a lot. I mean, you gotta get a hint that her dad's into having legal troubles. You find out officially in episode 3 that he made some bad investments and that he started siphoning money from a lot of his clients' accounts and using their money to try to cover his ass. And he was, in charge of a lot of people in Newport Beach's money, and he was supposed to invest it and turn it into something more, and he wasn't doing that. So Marissa becomes the for better or worse, there's just something always wrong with her.
Okay.
she's just by episode 7 she ODs in Tijuana.
She what in Tijuana?
ODs in Tijuana.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And then her and Ryan have a very on again, off again, on again, off again throughout her 3-season run on that show. It's I mean, yeah, back then I was like, it was just so much easier to like Summer, and then she gets better. I mean, I know Rachel Bilson in those first 2 episodes, she's just she's supposed to be vapid and kind of stupid and
not a whole lot to do.
Sassy, but they expand on her too, and her and Seth end up in a relationship that's they end up together eventually. But there was always and I guess on a show like that you want that kind of angst that Marissa was bringing, but it was a lot. Her character was just always we used to play and it's probably not good to him. Well, whatever. It wasn't 21 yet. We used to play we used to have OC parties when the show was on live.
Okay,
and we would turn so much of this into a drinking game, and it was just every time something was wrong with Marissa, you'd just be drunk with in the first 20 30 minutes of the episode. It was just she always had some kind of issue.
Oh yeah, when you mention that this show plays out in the melodrama, that is exactly the word that's running through my head. In episode 2, when she shows up to the house that Ryan is more or less squatting at. He's like, yeah, you just gotta go, you can't be here. And then it cuts to they're inside, and then it cuts to an outside shot of the house, and she's running out all frantically, crying, going to the car. I'm like, oh my, and Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah is playing on the soundtrack. I'm like, oh my god, this is
and
I don't even know.
That song becomes their theme a little bit, because they do the Jeff Buckley one plays in the season 1 finale. Okay. And then I don't know if you know what happens to her character.
No, I don't know anything after these 2 episode.
I don't know if you want to know.
Go ahead. I know it'll be a while if I ever get around to it.
So by the time season 3 happens, Misha Barton, it's clear that she doesn't want to do the show anymore.
Right.
And like I said, she was showing up to work late. She just wasn't as invested in it.
Do they kill her off?
To boost ratings, Fox was like, hey, this girl doesn't want to be on here anymore. Yeah, they were like that, and they said that came from the top. Do something dramatic with her if she wants to leave, if she doesn't want to be here. And Josh Schwartz today, I read a thing they did on the 20th anniversary. He said, if I could have done that differently, I would have figured out another way to I would have written her off to be hey, you need a break if you don't want to do this anymore. We could have written her off. She could have left town, done something. He was killing her off was the
permanent
worst possible choice we could have made. And it was funny, even though I mentioned right now about being annoyed with her a lot and because there was something always wrong with her, even I thought then, I was that was pretty not cool to do, because it was just, it felt like a stunt more than something that was necessary.
Okay.
And it didn't read as shocking as they wanted to. You could tell they did it for you could tell that they did it for shock value, and that it just didn't have the impact I think that they thought it would.
Well, now that the cat's out of the bag, what do they do with her? How do they kill her off?
So in season 3, I don't know, I guess I could bring up the high school. So Marissa gets sent to a public school in Newport Beach. It was actually Maricosta here in Manhattan Beach,
Oh.
where I went to high school. It's supposed to be the ghetto
Huh.
public school in Newport. Maricosta is not ghetto, but there is like one section of the school at one point. The lockers were all run down, and they were doing construction on one of the administration buildings. So they shot there to make it look like she wasn't at a school that was as nice as like Newport Harbor. So she's there, and she meets like this guy Volchek, and he's an asshole, and he
tight.
and then of course and during that period she's still going through the whole phase of like drinking and still like, I don't know if I want to be with Ryan, and I don't know if Ryan wants to be with me, and she's just troubled, and then she falls in with him, but eventually like that doesn't really work out, and Volchek realizes like, this girl from Newport's never gonna want to be with me, and they graduate high school at the end of the season. Everything's looking like it's going to be good. Like Marissa's got her life together after she finally gets rid of Volchek.
Of course.
And everyone, they're all reminiscing about old times, and like even Ryan and Marissa are like, maybe we can work things out. And they're driving down the highway, and Volchek catches up with them and like runs them off the road. Car wreck. Marissa dies in said car wreck.
Oh my goodness!
It's as dramatic as you it probably sounds.
They
wasn't the right.
her. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't the right choice though.
No, that's unfortunate. I'm sure she was pleased though, if she didn't want to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was pleased that she was done. I don't know if she was pleased that she got killed off. I mean, I was surprised that she did the podcast. That she said some things while they were doing the podcast about her time on the show that didn't sound as positive. She kind of made references to like people on the crew that made inappropriate gestures and comments while she was there.
Okay.
And she also made a comment about how they made certain two people series regulars, and it kind of like affected the workflow. And those two people were like the two people that host the podcast. And then it's Rachel Bilson and Melinda Clark. But I guess that's why they had her on to like clarify maybe what she meant.
Okay.
And she kind of tried to clarify. I think she clarified as much as she could. I guess she basically said to her knowledge, because she's only like 17, 18, 19 when she's on the show. So she's young, and she's only hearing things, from certain people.
Right.
But I mean, she said she looks back fondly on it for the most part now, and even she thinks she wishes it was handled differently. But she doesn't blame all of them. And she knows that she was in a different place too then, and she was kind of ready. She was restless, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine.
And I think they all were restless by that third season. I mean, that's a lot of TV. 27, 25, and then 24 by the time you get to season 3. That's a lot of episodes of episodic drama.
Yeah, certainly. Big heavy lift.
And it's like long hours. It's really and then of course, like more so than the adults, like the core 4 are like pushed into, they're everywhere. So they can't really, I mean, I know everyone is saying cheesy, like, oh, they can't really live a normal life, but during that period, they couldn't really go anywhere without being mobbed.
Exactly.
By everyone.
I can only imagine Misha Barton's like absence in the show. Did that have anything to do with the tank and ratings, or had that set in before she departed?
So I think, which is interesting, what they do with a show like this when it's successful, that first season, because they said the most watched episode is in season 1. I think it's an episode called The Rivals, and it was it aired after an episode of American Idol, and it was watched by, it's so weird because we don't get ratings like this anymore. It was watched by 12.76 million people live.
Holy.
But it used to air on Wednesday nights in its first season, and then they kind of started moving it around. They moved it to Thursday in its second season, which is a competitive TV night back then. Like Must See TV on NBC was like Friends, Will and Grace. So that's how big that night was on. Like,
wow.
So if they moved you to Thursday, so if they moved you to Thursday on like any network, that was like the most competitive night. And they were like, oh, we have this like huge hit, so like we can do that. And that worked for a little bit in season 2, but it started to bleed viewers because there was more competition.
Right.
And then you can kind of tell, even in season 2, that they did a lot really fast in season 1 with 27 episodes. By the time you do get to season 2, I think you have the pressure of being a hit, and then the pressure of the network being like more drama, more drama, more drama.
Yeah.
And then Josh Schwartz at the time is the youngest showrunner in television, so he's listening to them too. Right. And you're adding more drama, but then sometimes that more drama gets ridiculous, and then that also affects the show. The show's just not as good. The ratings start to dip significantly in the third season, which is why I think Fox was like, okay, well, if we kill her off, that'll be a big boost. It didn't work out that way. By the time you're to season 4, like the ratings are really bad.
Right.
But I mean,
Cancel
looking
bad,
back on it, looking back on it, fans like season 4 because they do wrap things up really well. Those 16, and they introduced Autumn Reeser was introduced in season 3 as Taylor, and she becomes Ryan's girlfriend in that season, and they have a really actually healthy, functional relationship. I mean, if you're to ask any fan of the show if Ryan and Marissa should have actually ended up together, you're gonna probably get a really mixed reaction on.
I see,
because I think they are actually the poster child for like a toxic TV relationship.
I see. Okay.
It's not like, I know they try to romanticize it, like, you know, he's a Romeo to her Juliet.
I got Romeo and Juliet vibes big time.
And they have good chemistry, and I mean, like Ben McKenzie and her are really good together. It's just, it's a very, I mean, I'm sure in real life you've seen people in relationships where it's like, it seemed like a part of their attraction is also this conflict that they have, and that is their main trope, is that there's always they can never be happy long, and I kind of really didn't think they would end up. And now, even watching like as a full-grown adult, I'm like I would never want them to end up. No. You would never want your friends like that to end up in a long-term relationship. Like, yo, dude, I kind of experience that right now, actually. So yeah, I see it. I'm not myself, but like I'm watching it. So yeah, it's definitely not really the most healthy relationship. But you might ask some fans, like, no, they're Ryan and Marissa all day long. They could look at it as like, oh, they got through all the odds and they should end up being together despite what
I can see myself being a team Ryan and Marissa fan if I were, to see the show. I like the chemistry that they had, and their relationship is like, I'm a sucker for like not just like girl next door like relationships, but ones especially where there's like a big obstacle, like somebody else in the picture, and like they come together through those odds. Like, I don't know, I like that in film. So I think, but again, there's clearly tons left to that show that I have not seen, and I'm sure that could change. But I can't get over how not that long ago it was so commonplace for seasons of television to be this vast. 27 episodes. That is such a haul. So this show would have run from like half a year? Like, how long is this season?
So season one starts August 5th, 2003. Which is not typical for like a fall. I mean, it started in the summer because they wanted to build interest of it. They're like, the demographic will be home watching it, so let's see if it works. And that's why it became such a hit. So usually, like when you get network TV, you would get like 12 or 13, and then you get like a back 9, depending on how well the show's doing. Right. And what they gave, they were like, it had 7, and when it came back in October after those first 7 episodes, they just were like, hey, we'll give you 20 more to finish out that first season, and that's pretty unheard of. And I can't imagine, like, even as a writer, you would have to be burnt out.
Oh my god!
Like by the end of that season, even
27 45-minute episodes. Holy!
I mean, and there is some definite filler there, even in season 1. And season 1 is regarded as like the best season, but there's definitely like some filler there. And then but I also appreciate they ended up getting rid of stuff that doesn't work. I mean, even though it doesn't seem like it, Luke does change and he grows as the show goes on. Eventually, him and Marissa break up. Him and Ryan actually become friends at one point in season 1. Ryan actually helps. He finds out that Luke finds out that his dad is secretly seeing a guy and he's married. Has all that. And Ryan is one of the people that is first to find out, and that actually solidifies their friendship, and they start to become friends. After that, because Ryan is very supportive of him and that situation, but they didn't know what to do with Luke after that, because Luke was like the bully, and that was like his role, and then they made him like their friend, and then they kind of played up the whole dumb jock thing with him, which was funny for a little bit, but then they were like, okay, we really don't know what to do with him anymore, so he's gone by like season 2, like he's He's in the first episode of season 2, then he's gone.
Wow.
Like, he also ends up sleeping with Marissa's mom in season 1. yeah. There's like Julie Cooper's you don't really get a sense of it in those first two. Like she grows too. Like it's easy to view her as like a snobby, bitchy character.
Yeah,
but you can tell that from where she's from, because she came from nothing. That she's like, I want to maintain this because I know what it's like to have nothing, and that's why she wants Marissa to have everything.
Right.
Like there's a comment which I know is like you would get it more if you lived here. I think it's in episode 3 where Sandy's talking to her about judging Ryan, and he's like, well, you should understand, like, Ryan's from Chino and you're from Riverside. And she like clutches her pearls, and then she goes to like talk to her husband, and she's like, you need to talk to Sandy. And I was like, what did he do? And she was like, well, he was rude. And he's like, well, what did he say? And she said, well, he said, I'm from Riverside. And he's like, well, you are. And she was like, well, it was his, and she was like, well, it was his tone. And like, so it's those kind of like jokes that they play up in the beginning, but then they actually make her a full-fledged character. They make Summer more dimensional as well.
It seems like there's a lot of room for character expansion in that first season order. Like there's a lot. I'm sure that they have to. I don't know where else they would fill up all those episodes if not for expanding their characters. And there's a lot, which is nice. I'm sure plenty that aren't introduced even in the first 2 seasons. So yeah, I can imagine that being all the rage back in the day. Seemed like a pinnacle of 2000s television, and again, one that I would definitely find myself enjoying if I had more of the time. But yeah,
it was fun. I mean, just to kind of throw in like a couple of things that it became really known for. It became really known for its music while it was on. It made a lot of like indie bands super popular during that time. They used to release actually on CDs music from the OC because it became so popular.
Sweet.
So Adam Brody is a big Death Cab for Cutie fan. They made that a big character thing for him, and they were on the show a few times. They used their music on the show because eventually in season 2 they actually have a place that they work at, or two of them work at, called the Bait Shop, and that was like a excuse for them to have like live bands on the show and to showcase
cool
all these indie bands. So I mean, the Killers were on season 2 of the OC, and this was like right as they're like taking off.
Well, yeah, Mr. Brightside would have come out like a year or 2 after that.
Yeah, so they had them on there. Rooney, Death Cab for Cutie, Modest Mouse, The Thrills. They were all kind of like played on that show a lot, and they used the music to tell a story rather than like just throwing in songs to like.
Okay,
that was kind of cool. Like they really wanted to reject using a lot of popular songs. They did a few times, but for the most part, they wanted to showcase indie bands and then also use songs that they thought pushed the story
That's
forward,
awesome.
rather than just having like a random like pop song in the moment and throwing it in there, which would have been very easy,
very corny, and would date the show more, I think.
Yeah. Another big thing that the show did, they have an episode called The Best Christmas Ever. And since Seth Cohen, since Sandy Cohen is Jewish and Kirsten is not, Seth comes up with Christmas so he can celebrate both holidays in the household. He actually calls his mom a Waspy McWasp when he's trying to explain the holiday to Ryan.
Yeah.
It became so big that they actually merchandised Christmas a lot, and they actually used the term on other TV shows as well, and were able to brand it in a way where they actually were able to sell like a lot of Christmas merchandise because it became so popular on the show.
I'm hearing of that.
And as Seth Cohen says, the best way to describe Christmas is 8 days of presents followed by 1 day of mini presents. So there you go. So there you go. And then also the filming locations as well. So that second episode, you kind of see it with there. I think it's Seth on his skateboard and Ryan's on the bike with Marissa on his back.
Yes.
That whole strip up here is the Redondo Beach Pier. That's Redondo Beach.
Yes, I was thinking this while I'm watching that. I'm like, because oddly enough, completely random, but at work today, I think it was while I was investigating. This is a small aside. Hearing about the earthquake in Southern California, and I was looking, I was mapping out California just because I was bored for a few minutes, and then I was zooming in just and exploring around like your area and Hermosa Beach and Manhattan Beach and all that, and I saw the pier from Hermosa like coming out in the water, and then watching the episode today, I'm like seeing them go down that in that sequence where like she's on the back of the bike and they're skateboarding and biking, and I was like, I wonder if that's the pier.
So like episode 5, you get a clear shot of it. They're like riding down Hermosa Beach Pier.
That's cool.
So you'll see some Hermosa Beach people know like the Sea Sprite is the Sea Sprite Motel used to be like a shady looking hotel, but like from like a distance it looks great. Now it's like they really redid it and made it fancy. They filmed like the Veronica Mars movie there, and they used that money to redo the whole hotel.
Nice.
And make it like a nicer place. But yeah, so they used those piers a lot. There was a lot of issues with like filming in Newport Beach, like financially. So which is why they didn't shoot in Orange County a lot. And then their main soundstage was actually on a place used to be called Raleigh Studios, then it was renamed Manhattan Beach Studios. It's actually located 2 or 3 blocks ahead of the restaurant I work at now that I manage at. They filmed all their interiors for the OC there. But the reason that they use the Redondo Beach Pier for most of their pier shots when they want to show the whole pier from a distance and pretend that it's in Newport. And then they would use Hermosa Beach Pier because the Hermosa Pier is a standard single pier like those in Newport, while the Redondo Pier is a much larger horseshoe-shaped pier that, when seen from a distance, looks nothing like the piers in Newport. So they were able to cheat it depending on where they were going. And the diner that they actually eat at in that second episode is the Redondo Beach Coffee House. It is still there. It has really bad reviews on Yelp. I don't I haven't been there in forever. They redid it and repainted it. But it is still every location from that show is still like a tourist attraction there, though. Depending on,
I imagine
there's someone. I mean, and in addition to that, like parts of La La Land were filmed in Hermosa Beach. So they
there are some pier shots out there.
So you get a lot of that too, in addition to
City of
DOC.
Stars. That's cool.
Yep, it's on that.
I'm gonna want to go see that. By the way, I expect you to be my tour guide.
You're like
yeah, certainly. I want to see this stuff in action. But
yeah,
that is
a lot
super
of
cool. I never would have thought about that. And La La Land, but that is super neat. I love that movie.
Yeah, a lot of the like jazz, like one of the places that he plays, takes her to like listen to music is like the Lighthouse Cafe, and that's right on the pier as well. They still have their La La Land poster placed firmly in the window.
Nice.
Like, hey, cool. like this was shot here. But yeah, it is interesting to watch something like the OC, which is so like very, like we're in Newport Beach, Orange County. Yes. But if you're watching it, if you're from here, you're like, no, that's not. Like there's certain shots where you're like, no, that's in Hermosa. That's the mermaid. Like I was just there. Like it's very much that kind of show. But yeah, it's pretty cool though to have that kind of like history, I guess.
Oh, certainly. Series. Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know if you noticed that the little girl that played Marissa's little sister Caitlin is actually Shailene Woodley in those first 2 episodes.
No way. That is crazy.
She eventually gets replaced by Willa Holland when they bring the character in for a more adult, or not adult, but like older than she was.
Older, okay,
arc. Yeah, they age her a lot. We're like, oh man, she was like, how old was she 2 seasons ago? I guess. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that she was on that.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't pick up. I mean, she's literally on screen for 5 seconds in the episode that I saw her in, and nothing crossed me as being familiar. But like hearing you say that now, I'm like, yeah. I mean, she's wearing like an equestrian helmet in the scene that she's in, so hard to it kind of obscures her features. But yeah, I can see it. Yep. That's pretty cool though.
And then Doug Liman directed the first 2 episodes of the show.
Noticed that. I was like, is he direct all these?
Which is, if you actually don't know who he is Swingers, The Bourne Identity, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They said they learned a lot working from him in those first 2 episodes. Mick G was a producer on the show. Mick G is famous for like doing the Charlie's Angels movies.
Okay.
And all that.
I saw that credit on like that producing credit. I was like, who is that? That's an interesting name.
Yeah, and Josh Shore said that he based the show on his experience he had when he was in college. as a Jewish kid from the East Coast, surrounded by all these kids from Newport Beach who were water polo players and these very blonde girls who only wanted to date them, I felt very much like an outsider. And that's how he came up with the whole concept of the OC. He didn't think he would be able to sell it, but it was like the right time for a show like that.
Okay.
And Fox was like the network to pick up. And the first person cast was Peter Gallagher. So I think that gave some credibility to it because, I mean, Peter Gallagher's probably big enough in those circles to like, oh, he's been in a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Where he adds some legitimacy to the project, I guess.
I see.
But he was the first one cast, and originally Adam Brody read for Ryan, and Ben McKenzie read for Seth, and I cannot see. I cannot see either one at all. Adam Brody doesn't even come off as a Ryan, even in interviews, so I can't see it at all.
I think they were perfectly cast, and it's funny how they auditioned for the opposite role because I could not picture either of them as anybody but themselves
at all. Like it's that's so weird. I mean, it is interesting to see what parts people go for, but yeah. And Misha Martin was one of the first to get for Marissa, and they were like, she looked the part, felt like she was the part,
right?
So they went after her right away. And as far as the cancellation, like I said, due to low ratings, it was rumored that the show would not return for a fifth season. In June 2006, Fox confirmed that the current order for the OC is 16 episodes, but added there was a chance to add more. And then in September of 2006, Rachel Bloom said that she felt like the show was over, and they all felt like it was coming to an end. There was a brief moment when the CW was thinking about taking it from Fox and airing a fifth season, but they ultimately did not do that, which is so funny because they end up picking up Gossip Girl right after the OC ends, which is another Josh Schwartz creation.
Right.
And,
I remember you saying that.
And the two shows have fun parallels with each other. They feel very similar, just in different coast, basically.
Right, yeah.
But you can kind of see the same kind of tropes with all those characters. I just think that by the time he gets Gossip Girl, he's just way more confident in himself as a writer, creator. Definitely. And maybe learn from the mistakes that if he felt I think he really felt like he would have listened to himself more and his writers more instead of, I think it's hard when you're getting network,
especially as a really young show writer. I mean, you can't blame him for kind of bending the knee to studio demands or network demands. But yeah, no, serves as a great learning opportunity and sort of a first foray into television production, because Gossip Girl is a phenomenon, even more so than the OC. I would argue
it lasted longer, and I would by 2 more seasons. And I know I have friends that love the OC, and they're gonna hate that. I think it did have a bigger overall impact, but maybe it feels like it did.
I would agree with that.
And the only reason I say that is I feel like it really. The CW was struggling and they needed an identity for that network, and that show became the identity for that network.
I never would have guessed Gossip Girl was the CW or got picked up by the CW. Ew.
Like because by the time because that network changed like its look in ways, right? First it was like 6 sexy teen dramas, and they were like no, like comic book shows. So it like really
that's how I look at it. Yeah,
over time. But
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think it did have an overall bigger impact. Not to say that the OC wasn't huge. I just think Gossip Girl had more time to make its mark a little bit.
Yeah, seems so.
But the OC actually is responsible for the creation of MTV's reality show Laguna Beach, The Real Orange County, which eventually had its own spinoff, The Hills. And they also credited it with the reality series The Real Housewives of Orange County as well. Okay. They said that the show's success as a primetime soap opera also helped Mark Cherry get Desperate Housewives on air when ABC was looking for its own nighttime soap to put on the network, and that show became huge as well. They really said the OC really popularized the primetime soap again, because that also comes in waves where it hits and it doesn't, and it hits and it doesn't, just like anything. But yeah, it was a pretty big pop cultural phenomenon when it was on.
Definitely, I say all in all, it has a pretty good legacy.
Yeah, it does, and it is weird to think that like like I said before, that it burned bright really quick and then burnt out.
Yeah.
And I
That's too
remember
bad.
feeling, I remember feeling, I mean, I think those first 2 seasons we all watched. I mean, this is weird at a time to watch shows live, but like
Right.
collectively as a group of friends, we watched that show live every week, those first 2 seasons. And then season 3, you can feel some of us like trickling off, not coming together to watch it together.
Right.
And then season 4, I think I was like, yo, fill me on. I don't even know what's going on.
Oh yeah, I know. I've had many shows go that way too. It's kind of unfortunate when something was so great and beloved and in the now, just to kind of fall off so shortly later. It's disappointing, but
yeah.
yeah.
I will say this: I am happy that in this day and age where we should own physical media, I'm happy that I own all 4 seasons on DVD.
Nice.
There's one really short story I'll tell. I'm not friends with this person anymore, which is why this story is funny. I let my friend Chad at the time borrow all 4 of them, and then we were friends for like 5 years, and we had a falling out, and it was a bad one. And he still had my DVDs, and I was like, I told one of our buddies, I was like, I just gotta go get my DVDs because he wasn't like returning my text or anything,
Right.
and I was like, I'm just gonna go over there and just give me shit.
Yeah.
So I went over there, and it's funny a story now because like when I tell people that, you're like, wait, you marched over to his place to go get your OC DVDs?
I
I'm
don't-
like, they're mine.
I don't blame you. I'd take my media seriously too.
And I remember he was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah, they're mine." And then he kind
Yeah.
of like it was almost like 2 fucking girls that broke up. He like shoved them at me and like gave it back to me like, and I was like, "Thank you."
Well, there you go. At least you got your CDs back or your DVDs
I
back.
got
That's a
DVDs.
win.
Like,
And
God,
those are the
I mean,
same
it's
ones
on
you have in your
HBO
collection
Max.
this day, right? Okay.
Yeah, same
Nice.
withered boxes because I've had them a very long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's on HBO Max. You can stream it there. But like we've seen, this stuff can come off at any moment, and you might not have it anymore. So you never know. And of course, you don't have it in Canada right now.
That's right.
I had to send you those first 2
Yes.
episodes.
Thank you very much, by the way.
I guess it was streaming on Netflix for a while there, and they took it off. I don't know why they did.
Who knows what they do, licensing and whatnot. It's frustrating, but I do remember. I think I've seen it on Netflix before, like browsing anyway. But yeah, not recently.
But yeah, if you ever have time, I'm just gonna send you 1 episode at a time. Like,
Feel free,
other
yeah,
week,
nudge
like,
it
yeah, here
in
you
my
go,
direction,
man.
and I'm sure I'll be looking. I'm back into The Wire though too, and what else?
he might be 30 by the time you finish season 1.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
we'll see. I think there's enough content in there to last me quite a while. So, but no, I'm excited. It's a show that caught my interest, and I would definitely recommend to anybody looking to start something new and that was looking for something down that alley. Then yeah, I'd say recommend the OC would get a recommendation from me, and I can imagine from you as well.
Yeah, definitely from me. I still think it holds up. Like I said, it's dated in some ways, but in other ways, it's
But like a
still
charming
feels very-
sort of dated.
Yeah. It's still kind of, and you are seeing, I mean, other generations of people watching it now who didn't grow up with it. Like,
That's
a
right.
new generation of teenagers are watching it and appreciating it. And it's interesting that this new generation is watching something from like that started in 2003 and addicted to it in the same way that we were addicted to it when we were watching it back then, except they had the benefit of just being able to watch and not wait a week.
That's right.
They get to
They won't
just
know
watch
the struggle.
The struggle is not real for them,
And that adds to the experience, I think.
it does. It really does. That I mean, you hate the whole like waiting for it thing back then,
But it just makes it so
there-
much more savory by the time the episode comes around, right?
Yeah, it does. It was a fun time to watch something like that with my friends. And I mentioned in that last episode that we did, like, the One Tree Hill comes out in September, and that went right over my head. I didn't watch it. I just didn't, and my friends were
burned out.
watching it. Some
Yeah.
of them were watching it. I just felt like I was watching like the cooler like cousin of that show. Like, no,
Yeah.
I'm good. But that show has its fans too, and it's a very rabid fan base. But I definitely just didn't get into it. But even that show today is, they all have this like weird resurgence now, which is interesting to watch. I guess like there's a time for like all these things kind of come back.
Come back, yeah.
yeah,
I wish
whenever,
Mindhunter would come back and people would go give that show.
That would be great.
Get a season 3.
That'd be great. And and there's not
it
there's not 27 episodes, and they just need.
Yeah, there you go. It was perfect. Oh,
perfect. But yeah, it gets a recommendation for me. I'm gonna make sure that Jackson sees some important ones down the line.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna need to know what he thinks of Oliver. And for everyone listening, you know who Oliver is. By the time Owen watched it and he got to Oliver, I was like, oh wait, I was like, wait till you get to fucking Oliver in season 1. And then like by the time he got to Oliver, he was like, he just sent me a text. I was like, fucking Oliver. I was like, I know, right? So yeah, I if you had that same
keep me in a loop, I'll keep you updated for sure.
For sure, yeah. But yeah, as we close up that little discussion about the OC, 20 years later, we have one more quick thing to kind of bring up about the box office.
That's right.
I hated being wrong about this one. That was
I know, yeah.
I mean, fun. Like I saw it. I mean, I won't go into too much detail, but what I liked, like small things, and I think the most important thing, I know people are saying that parts of it feels like it doesn't feel any different from any other superhero origin story, but I kind of feel like I kind of feel like a lot of those origin stories are very similar. Like Spider-Man is very similar to. It has that same feel as Blue Beetle, where you have this kid who, gets an extraordinary ability, and then he has to figure out what to do with it. Yes. I don't think that it's bad to be like. I don't really look at it as a cliche, because that's a trope in a lot of comic book stories. It is what it is.
Right.
But I thought it had a lot of heart and a lot of humor. I love the family dynamic in it, and I also love that it stood on its own and it wasn't connected to anything else.
I heard that, and I commend them for that. And I couldn't have been an easy decision. It would have drawn, I'm sure, a lot of people to theaters if there was a cameo from somebody else in the DCU, but they decided to stick to a brand new character and not rely on anybody else. And I mean, commend them for that.
They mentioned Batman, they mentioned the Flash, but it's almost like, in passing, like,
right.
And I just thought it was like really refreshing. The reviews were really good especially for the DC Now You.
Right.
But I only made $25 million this weekend, and that's on the low end. It was supposed to, the high end was 30, and
right.
I was trying to be generous. I said 35. I thought like
that's right. I remember.
I thought something would come of it.
I mean, I went lower. I think I met with tracking at 30 and still came in. It still came in under that. So yeah, we were both a little bit off this week. I do remember thinking though that I wouldn't be surprised if it made a little bit lower.
Yeah.
And I can't help but feel like there's a lot of factors, I think, going into this, why this movie doesn't hit tracking, and even the tracking wasn't that high to begin with. But I'd be curious. Sorry, go ahead.
I want to know if you agree with this one, and and be 100% honest. It got a B+ cinema score.
Okay.
Which is on the low end for like a comic book movie. Like it indicates a little bit more. It indicates a little bit more like.
I think a B+ sounds solid to me.
I thought so too. I thought I would be happy with it. I mean, like when a horror movie gets a B+, everyone's like, yes.
Why not for that? I mean, this is a unconnected first time character,
really kind of unknown.
Else. Like sounds great, but
so
anyway.
This guy on Twitter, Louis Fernando, he wrote this very thought-provoking thing about it on Twitter, and he said, as I fear, Blue Beetle's B+ cinema score was a reflection of cultural demo disparity. As expected, the Latinos who did show up led with 38% of the total audience. They gave the film a high 90% score, on par with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 or Shang-Chi at 91%. What would lead to an A cinema score if it had been the overall consensus amongst the Latino demographic. So the problem was the film and its cultural references didn't resonate as strongly with the other demos, led by 27% Caucasians attending, who just gave the movie a 75% positive score. That disconnect made the general audience's rating go down to a 84% positive, with 65% definitely recommending the film, in line with its B+ cinema score.
Okay.
He said the conclusion is obvious. If you have Latin or Hispanic background, you got love for this movie. If you're not, you may not love Blue Beetle as much. Do you think that is a factor? And
well, with just that, I don't know. I'd like to maybe see some more, but I don't feel like. I mean, I think it's natural that the demographic that is most represented by this movie showed up for it, and gave it that praise. I don't know that maybe because other audience demographics didn't necessarily match that praise exactly. It sounds like it was still overall positively received. So I don't know that. I feel like although it's like other demographics had their ratings come in a little less than the Latino, Latinx demographic, doesn't necessarily mean that that's a negative. And I feel like there's reasons for the disparity between those scores, but I don't know. I don't know if I agree one way or another.
I thought it was interesting. I mean, I thought it was an interesting take, and I think and cinema score is just one part of this. It's not everyone, that it doesn't it's not getting rated. I do think I did see some reviews that from a lot of Caucasian people that I felt were a little offensive in the way that they approached the movie. I posted one on Instagram that kind of made really unnecessarily stereotypical Latino references in their blurb that they use for Rotten Tomatoes to give it a negative review, and like you wouldn't see that for any other type of movie, I don't think.
Right.
Thought that was unnecessary, and then there were some. I saw one person's review. He's like, "Well, it's interesting to see that some Caucasians aren't loving it and saying that it's very much a standard superhero movie, but they have to understand for us this hits different because we don't get it a lot." And I also understand that.
Yeah,
too.
I
agree. I think there might be a cultural divide there, but I don't know if that's the whole story. It's also a very not.
I like how you just
character.
put that. That's how I would say it. There's a reason for that disparity, but it's not the full picture. I completely agree.
Yeah,
and first time character.
First time character. It's not well known. He's not Batman. He's not Superman. Also, the biggest market for the film was LA, and LA got hit with like bad weather Sunday. And I know that is a part of the, I think, reason too.
Absolutely.
But I mean, there were reports about the budget being 120. I heard 104 now, which is still high. I mean, it's still way too high. It's not getting close to that here. I don't think, unless
maybe worldwide or
maybe, but they have to show up really big for it. But I don't know, man. It's unfortunate because I feel like I was watching some of the stuff with the director and the actors. They seem so proud of it. And like, I hate that what came out of this weekend was, it dethroned Barbie, but it was under expectations. Or Blue Beetle gets squashed in its number one debut. It was like all of it was kind of mean.
Right.
And that's kind of not what you want to see when, especially when they talk about how important it is that this movie did well. If you want to see more of this,
well,
I mean, but granted, it started as an HBO Max release. It wasn't even supposed to get a theatrical release. So I don't know how Deadline was like, hey, this was going to be a weekend where we had no wide release until they decided to put this here. So they looked at it as like, that's $25 extra million going into, the theatrical landscape.
Right.
That might be it might be good for exhibition. I don't know if that's really good for the studio who's like, but I mean, it's unfortunate. Well, I felt bad reading some of it, but because it's a good movie. I thought it was solid.
I mean, I was surprised to hear some people, not surprised. I didn't really know what my expectations for this movie would be, but I did hear some pretty positive reviews for it from some people whose opinions I take quite seriously. So was happy to see that for this movie. I think there's a lot of other factors still to consider. All major in their own right, but we have the cast and actors can't be promoting this right now due to the strike, which
that's another big
who really knows how that's going to impact the movie. Certainly negatively, but to quantify it, we'll never really know. But definitely something to keep in mind. Also, I feel like there's not a whole lot of confidence from the studio. What with like when this movie is released, like mid-August, like as we've talked about earlier, like not a fantastic release date. Not for a movie that you're confident is going to compete at the box office and make a lot of money. I feel like that is due because it is a new character we haven't seen before. It's not based on any previously adapted IP. So that's could be a reason, but regardless, not dropped in a weekend known for, people flocking to the theaters for.
Yeah.
And there's another point that I had that might be escaping me at the moment. Just not a lot of promotion. Or unless, do you think that maybe more in LA? Did you see more trailers and whatnot for this?
I saw trailers and stuff for it, but I feel like most of the promotion for it was online. They released a ton of key art, which I thought some of the best looking like posters and key art I've seen for like a comic book movie in a while. It's all really cool looking, but
Okay.
that doesn't reach everyone.
Exactly.
So,
Like, I
you
mean,
know,
like I can't remember other than when the trailer dropped. I don't remember seeing much about it over here.
I want to throw something to our listeners, and we'll put a poll up. I'm curious to know because this got better reviews critically than The Flash.
Nice.
And I'm wondering if you gave Blue Beetle that June opening and put more promotional muscle into it, would it have opened better?
I bet, yeah.
In June, it does. Compared to I don't want to say dumping it in August. I don't think they dumped it. I just think August is such a we're not sure about this month.
Exactly. Yeah.
As you were kind of saying, I think it hints at a lack of confidence, even though they did give it a theatrical release. It hints at like, oh, we're still not sure how this is going to do.
Exactly. And well, in that sense, it does feel like a dump, kind of a dumping ground. Like it's like, hey, we're going to at least give it the legs of the ability to drop it in theaters from HBO Max. But if we're going to do that, we're going to do it in August, like, which does feel like the kind of like the black sheep of the theatrical window. You know what I mean? So
still feels like a slight cop out, right?
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it feels like something maybe the bar above a dump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Knowing what we know now, I don't think The Flash was ever going to be popular because of
no matter what,
a lot of stuff going against it. And I bet I'd be interested to see what would have happened. I mean, the strike would have still been a factor at that point, or not the actor strike though. Just the writers.
They could have still promoted it.
Yeah, they still could have promoted it. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, to see what could have been.
I will say, I think the actors not being able to promote Strays hurt that. That only opened to $8.3 million, and I was way confident. I was wrong. Sorry, guys. $8.3 million. I think it opened to. You were closer with your.
Yeah,
you were much more realistic
we went 12 and 20. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I based it on the reactions from that trailer when I went to go see movies this summer. I think maybe everyone in that theater was just high and they're just laughing at really, really dumb stuff. And I was basing it all on that. But maybe that does better if you had Will Ferrell and Jimmy Fox out there promoting it.
I bet.
And being able to promote it.
That suffers from all the same problems that Blue Beetle did, minus the, I guess, expectations of a superhero movie. Yeah. But a lot of the same problems, unfortunately. It's going to be a year, like however long this goes on, I guess from May and July onwards, it's going to be a tough year to like really take seriously box office as a reflection of the quality or the stamina of movies because of, half the industry, more than half. I don't even know how to quantify it, but not being able to promote their movies. It doesn't feel really fair.
Yep, I agree. And before we get to another August dump, to this, it just feels like one. Oppenheimer Love. It's now it surpassed Interstellar at the worldwide box office.
Wow,
$718 million worldwide so far.
Do you think it has 800 million?
Oh, I think it does.
Wow,
I think it does.
It's only been a month as of filming actually today that it's come out.
Yep, and
that's pretty impressive.
That's crazy. And then of course Barbie's made like 1.2 something billion worldwide. I think it's either this week or next week that will surpass Super Mario Brothers for the highest grossing movie of the year here domestically. So
you think it rides that all the way to December?
Yeah, I don't think anything's topping it at this point. Yeah,
not even Marty's Killers of the Flower Moon.
That's not making that much. I mean, it's gonna make money. It's not making like. I mean,
not $1 billion. Cool. No, it doesn't. Yeah,
that'd be cool. I bet. But it's not. It's not, but we gotta be realistic, I guess.
Yeah,
but yeah, I thought that was cool that
sitting in the driver's seat right now.
But people were listing Nolan's like his movies, like his last view, and like how much they made worldwide. Like, there's no one touching him as a director as far as that.
That's
like
right.
No one like the amount of money that all of his movies sans Tenet, and that wasn't even his fault. That was like Tenet wasn't his fault. That was like at all. He can't control COVID. So
speaking of Nolan, Cam had sent me something recently, some sort of accolade that Nolan had reached. It was I have it here right now. He goes, Christopher Nolan has become the first film director to create 4 original projects that aren't sequels, remakes, reboots, or comic book adaptations that have earned over 500 million worldwide. So props to Chris Nolan.
Props to him indeed.
That is,
there's no one doing that. And I honestly don't. I mean, We all don't want to start a fight. Yeah, I'm just Christopher Nolan. I was like, is there anyone that Spielberg doing that? I mean, I don't know, not anymore. But no one right now, like in his age range, like kind of like his generation of filmmakers is doing that right now.
No, I think he's in a league of his own at the moment, which is great.
Testament of his skill. So there's that. But on the opposite end of that box office glory, we do have one wide release opening this weekend, currently sitting at 58% on Rotten Tomatoes. Gran Turismo, and they want to make sure that it's based on a true story, because on Rotten Tomatoes it says Gran Turismo based on a true story.
Yes, that is a heavy aspect of the marketing for this movie.
They want you to know that this is real, which I guess is like it's a cool hook. That I had no idea that was the story. I had no idea. I knew about the game.
Trying to differentiate from a video game adaptation and sort of kind of make it some sort of
you can tell
hybrid.
They really are.
Yeah.
You can tell they're like those are usually bad, but this is like something different.
Yeah. But it's a little bit of the same formula, but definitely different. I kind of like that approach. I think it's neat. It's not very often that you have a story like this that can incorporate both reality and a video game franchise. So I think that's really neat, and to have a compelling story made out of it. I was actually excited for this after the first trailer dropped, and then to find out, of all people, it was Neil Blomkamp directing of District 9 fame. I was like, this is so not up his alley. But like him as a director,
the first trailer was good too.
Yeah, I
actually thought it sold it really well. I don't know what the interest. It's hard for me to tell what the interest is in this.
Definitely,
I've been trying to figure it out, but I think they've marketed it pretty well. I just don't know
who it's targeted at, who's going to go see it, how many. Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely Gran Turismo fans, maybe car fans. I bet you our boy Ty will be going to see this one, I would imagine, anyway.
Oh, probably. I should actually ask him.
Yeah.
So, oh man, does it open like at the same as Blue Beetle, or is it open below it?
What's it tracking? do we know tracking?
The tracking's 21 million, so that's 21. around what Blue Beetle gross this weekend. Like
right, exactly.
25.
To compare it, so we were talking earlier, Neil Blomkamp's last theatrical outing was 8 years ago in 2015 with Chappie, with Hugh Jackman, which had an opening weekend haul of 13.4 million. So these are not exactly comparable, and it's been long enough that I don't know if even like the average moviegoer is really going to know Neil Blomkamp or know what his most recent project was. So hard to really use that as a comparison, but it's something of a number. But so it's tracking at 21. What do you feel?
Watch when I go low, it's gonna go high. I'm going low, whatever. Okay, I'm not gonna go too low. I think 16.
Okay, it's not crazy. I mean, so what? It'll be the last weekend of August, or one of the last weekends of August. I don't really know. I've never really had to pay attention before what sort of appetite there is for new releases at this time of the year before, because I know September and October will ramp up, but I'm feeling you. I'm going to join you low, but I'm going to go right above you at 19.
All right, there you go. 16, 19.
I hope this movie does well, but I mean, it might get
a bump from that National Cinema Day. It might get a bump on Sunday.
Yeah, there you go.
But we'll see. There's other stuff out there. People are still. I feel like Oppenheimer and Barbie are going to play throughout September in this October. Like that's how it seems like.
Yeah,
there's a possibility that
they got crazy legs, those movies.
Yeah, but with Blue Beetle, I'm hoping for the best. But yeah, I'm going 16. Again, another similar budget too with Blue Beetle.
Oh no,
a lot of money being spent on this stuff.
Just way more than necessary.
But we shall see. We'll see if we're right on this one.
This time next week we'll know. But
we will.
I think that concludes.
It does. We covered a lot. We did. But we didn't want to miss out on the 3 controversial news stories from the last week, and talking about the OC for a little bit, as well as bringing up box office. Thank you, as always, Jackson, for humoring me on the
absolutely.
OC talk.
It's really my pleasure. I love the chance to see some stuff I haven't seen before and chat about it with one of my buddies. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know a little bit of a hybrid, a little bit of a different thing, but let us know what you think. If you guys like your blend of news with your anniversary episodes, let us know anywhere on social media at Back to the Blockbuster. This has been episode 116. Thanks for joining us while we chat about the OC and some news and box office. As always, You guys can find us anywhere you guys get your streaming for podcasts, and iOS users can find us at the Playlist app on the iOS store. Yeah, and as always, it's been a blast. Stay tuned to our socials. We'll have a poll up there for you guys to vote on this week, and hopefully hear some movies too to select for some other future anniversary episodes. So thanks a lot, Gaius, for having us, and take care. Till next time, guys. Stay safe.